In the shadows where truth and tales intertwine, we find the thrilling, the chilling, the downright spine-tingling. From the paranormal to the peculiar, every echo has a story. Dare to delve into the unexpected, the unexplained? Brace yourself, for you're about to embark on a journey where fear meets fascination. Stay tuned if you dare, for stories that will make your heart race and your mind ponder. Welcome to the realm of the eerie, the realm of the unknown. And remember, like and subscribe, if you dare. A shiver of anticipation ran down my spine as I stepped into the room, the air heavy with an eerie silence. This was no ordinary day for me, Captain Turner, an army man with a lineage of military men before me. The pride in my father's eyes when I joined the army reverberated in my heart. From being a fresh recruit to scaling the ranks to special forces, my journey had been a winding path of discipline and courage. This day, however, was unlike any other. I had been summoned for an interview, a mysterious process for a top-secret project. The room was sparsely populated with 3 other men, each bearing the signature of different armed forces. There was a peculiar sense of competition that hung in the room like a thick fog. The silence was shattered by the entrance of a colonel. His stern voice echoed in the room. "Men, you have been selected for the chance to enter our top-secret project." The words seemed to linger in the room, casting a heavy shadow of anticipation over us. Then came the challenge, the entrance to a room that promised a test of survival. As the door slammed shut behind us, we were plunged into a darkness so profound it felt like a living entity. Our hearts pounded in our chests as panic set in. Suddenly, we found ourselves in a sprawling wooded area, a sight so bewildering that we questioned our own senses. How the hell did they fit this place in here, we wondered. But there was no time for wonderment. We had to survive, to fend off any hostiles that lurked in the shadows, using nothing but broken branches and rocks. The colonel's voice boomed again. "Boys, you're on your own now. You must make it to the other side of the forest by any means necessary." The words echoed ominously, amplifying the silence that followed. Our hearts pounded in our chests as the door slammed shut behind us, leaving us to face the unknown. We were in the belly of a beast, a forest that should not exist in a room, and yet it did. We trudged on, our hearts pounding like war drums in our chests. The forest was a labyrinth of shadows and uncertainty. We clutched our makeshift weapons, broken branches and jagged rocks in our hands, each step we took echoing our mounting dread. This was a forest of fear, a test of our mettle. We were military men, trained for combat, but nothing could have prepared us for this darkness. The air was heavy with anticipation, with danger. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig sent a chill down our spines. We were not alone. We could hear the roars, the howls, the screeches, the noises that didn't belong to any creature we knew of. We moved as one, a unit bound by the grim determination to survive. We had to make it to the other side, had to prove our worth. But this forest was not just a test, it was a predator, and we were its prey. The unseen threats lurked in the shadows, their roars echoing through the eerie silence, a constant reminder of the danger lurking around us. Our numbers dwindled as the forest claimed its victims. Each man was taken down by an unseen assailant, their screams echoing in the darkness before being abruptly cut off. We were being hunted, picked off one by one, the shadows growing bolder with each victory. The forest was a nightmare, a maze of fear and uncertainty. But we were soldiers, trained to face the unknown, to fight against the odds. We pressed on, our resolve steeling us against the fear. We had to survive, had to make it to the other side. But the forest was relentless, its unseen threats growing bolder, more aggressive. One by one we fell, each taken by a different shadow lurking in the darkness. The air was thick with terror as the Marine and I ran for our lives, the monstrous shadow hot on our heels. Our breaths came out in ragged gasps, the cold air stinging our lungs. We were the last two standing in this eerie, unnatural forest, a test of survival orchestrated by the military's top brass. Our boots crunched on the forest floor, our hearts pounding like war drums in our chests. We were being hunted and the predator was gaining on us. A guttural roar echoed through the trees, a chilling reminder of the beast that was closing in. The forest was a maze, a labyrinth of shadows and fear, and we were the mice running from the cat. Suddenly, in a shocking twist, the Marine lunged at me. The look in his eyes was primal, desperate. He intended to use me as bait, a sacrificial lamb to buy him some time. I dodged his attack, my fist instinctively connecting with his face. He stumbled, falling hard onto the forest floor. The beast was upon us. Its monstrous face, a grotesque mix of man and monster, leered from the shadows. Its long arms reached out, claws gleaming in the faint moonlight. I saw the Marine on the ground, his eyes wide with terror. I could leave him run and save myself, but I couldn't. I couldn't leave a man behind. I rushed to help him, but he pushed me away. "Run!" he shouted, his voice hoarse with fear and desperation. I saw the creature closing in, its monstrous form looming over him. There was no time. I ran, leaving him behind. His screams followed me, a haunting reminder of my decision. His screams echoed through the forest as I ran, leaving him to face the beast alone. I could still hear them, even when I had reached the safety of the other side. His screams were a chilling reminder of the horrors that lurked within the forest, and the price that some had to pay. I stood alone, facing the beast, the door to safety stubbornly closed behind me. The creature towered over me, its eyes devoid of life, its teeth gleaming in the faint light. I was its prey, its next victim. But I was also a soldier, a fighter, and I was not going to go down without a fight. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding in my chest. The forest was silent, as if holding its breath in anticipation of the battle to come. The beast let out a low growl, a sound that made my blood run cold, but I steeled myself and prepared to face my enemy. I remembered my training, the countless hours spent honing my skills, preparing for situations just like this. I knew I had to use my surroundings to my advantage, to fight smart, not just hard. I looked around, my eyes quickly scanning the forest for anything I could use as a weapon. The beast lunged at me, but I dodged its attack, rolling to the side and grabbing a broken branch from the ground. I swung it at the creature, landing a hit, but it barely seemed to faze it. I knew I needed something more, something that could really hurt it. I remembered the rocks we had used earlier, their sharp edges perfect for a weapon. I quickly found a large one, its weight comforting in my hand. I waited for the beast to attack again, and when it did, I was ready. I threw the rock with all my might, hitting it square in the head. The beast let out a roar of pain, and I seized my chance, rushing forward and landing blow after blow. Finally, the beast fell, defeated. I stood over it, panting heavily, my body aching from the fight. But I had done it. I had faced my fear and come out victorious. The door behind me finally opened, the colonel's voice ringing out, "Well done, soldier, you've earned your place in the project." Exhausted and victorious, I stepped through the door, the haunting screams of the Marine still ringing in my ears. I had survived the nightmare, but at what cost? The words echoed in my mind as I walked through the corridors of Sector 12, now an initiate of the top-secret project Woodland. The horrors I had encountered, the lives lost, and the guilt of leaving a fellow soldier behind weighed heavily on my conscience. Every creaking door, every flicker of light seemed to bring back memories of the eerie woodland darkness, the monstrous shadows, and the chilling screech that had nearly been my end. The adrenaline rush of the chase, the dread of being preyed upon, the desperation to survive, all were now replaced by a profound silence, a silence that was almost deafening. I thought of the Marine, the last man standing with me in that forest of fear. His face, his screams, the moment he pushed me away, saving himself to save me, all were etched in my mind. A brave soldier, a worthy adversary, and a man who had paid the ultimate price for my survival. His sacrifice was a stark reminder of the grim reality of our existence and the cost of survival. I wondered if I would ever be able to forgive myself, to shake off the guilt that gnawed at my soul. Would the shadows of the past ever let me be? Would the echoes of the Marine sacrifice ever fade away, or would they forever haunt me? A chilling reminder of the horror I had experienced, the price I had paid for survival, the price we all had paid. As I walked into the unknown, into the heart of Project Woodland, I knew I carried with me not just the survival skills and the battle scars, but also the haunting memories of that fateful day. I was a soldier, a survivor, but also a man forever bound by the chains of guilt and remorse. Yes, I had survived, but the horror of that day would forever be etched in my memory, a chilling reminder of the cost of survival. The initiation in the woods was just the beginning of my saga. As a retired Army captain, I was no stranger to the extraordinary, but nothing could prepare me for what I was about to encounter. After a chilling encounter with an unknown beast in the woods, I was escorted into a room where I was briefed on Project Woodland and received my Z-12 top secret clearance. My skin prickled with goosebumps as the colonel flicked through slides of creatures that resided only in the deepest recesses of nightmares and legends. Slendermen, werewolves, Bigfoot, feral humans, dark shadowy figures, and more. These were not mere myths, they were cryptid beasts, and they were terrifyingly real. The colonel explained that our mission was to locate, neutralize, and examine these unknowns. The forests, he explained, were their sanctuaries, a place where they could thrive, away from the prying eyes of civilization. Our role was to venture into these dark woods, to uncover the secrets that they held, to understand where these creatures came from, and, more importantly, how to stop them. We were to work closely with park rangers and the FBI, but secrecy was paramount. We were the sentinels of the unknown, the protectors of mankind against these elusive monsters. I sat there in that cold room listening to the colonel's words, my mind reeling. I'd heard of strange disappearances in the news, people vanishing without a trace in national parks. It was always explained away as accidents or unfortunate run-ins with wildlife. But now, those stories took on a sinister new meaning. My disbelief was replaced with a chilling realization. The strange disappearances in the news began to make sense. I was now a part of something much bigger, something that lurked in the shadows and thrived in secrecy. And as I left that room, I knew my life would never be the same again. The colonel handed me a file. "Your first case, rookie," he said with a stern look. I opened the file to find the picture of a young boy named Freddie. His innocent smile was a stark contrast to the grim details that followed. Freddie had disappeared while hiking with his family. Witnesses claimed to have seen an unknown creature lurking in the woods that day. My mission was not only to locate Freddie's remains, but also, if possible, to neutralize the creature responsible for his disappearance. The colonel's words echoed in my mind. Locate, neutralize, and examine. It was a simple mantra, but the task was anything but. The unknown creature could be any of the cryptids we'd been briefed on. A werewolf, Bigfoot, or perhaps something else entirely. The stakes were high. The lives of innocent people like Freddie were on the line. If we could understand these creatures, learn where they came from and how to stop them, countless lives could be saved. But first, I had to face the unknown. I had to venture into the very heart of the wilderness where these creatures resided. The colonel's final words were a harsh reminder of the reality I was stepping into. "Be careful and don't mess this up, rookie." There was no room for error. My actions could mean the difference between life and death, between safety and another headline about a mysterious disappearance. I was flown to the national park where Freddie had disappeared. As I abseiled down into the clearing, a sense of heightened alertness engulfed me. Every rustle in the leaves, every shadow in the corner of my eye could be the unknown creature. My senses were on high alert, the anticipation was palpable. As I embarked on my mission, I felt a strange mix of fear and excitement. I was stepping into the unknown, on the trail of a cryptid. I was a rookie on my first case, and I had no idea what awaited me in the depths of the wilderness. As the helicopter dropped me into the wilderness, a sense of heightened alertness and anticipation engulfed me. Every rustle in the underbrush, every snap of a twig had my heart pounding. The forest was alive, its every breath echoing in my ears, its every movement under my watchful gaze. I was a hunter in an unknown world, my prey a mystery I was yet to unravel. The journey to the cliff was a trek through nature's labyrinth. As I moved deeper into the forest, the trees stood taller, their branches reaching out like skeletal hands, their leaves whispering secrets of the unknown. The air was thick with a sense of foreboding, the silence punctuated by the distant call of a bird, the rustle of leaves, the quiet whisper of the wind. The cliff loomed ahead, a jagged monument to nature's raw power. The climb was steep, every handhold a test of strength, every foothold a test of courage. With sweat dripping down my brow and my heart pounding in my chest, I scaled the face of the cliff, the world below shrinking with every inch I ascended. At the top, the forest stretched out before me, a sea of green under the azure sky. It was there that I found the first clue. A torn piece of clothing caught on a branch, fluttered in the wind like a flag of surrender. The fabric was faded, the edges frayed, a silent testimony of a struggle long past. Nearby, large depressions marred the forest floor. They were tracks leading deeper into the forest, a trail left by an unknown beast. I followed, my senses heightened, my heart pounding in my chest. The forest was a maze, its every twist and turn a new challenge, its every shadow a new mystery. As I delved deeper, the forest seemed to close in around me, the trees whispering tales of horror, the wind carrying the scent of fear. The tracks led me to a clearing, a silent sanctuary in the heart of the forest. There, in the clearing, lay the skeletal remains of a child. A chilling breeze swept through, whispering the name Freddy. The cave yawned before me, a gaping mouth of darkness swallowing the light. The air was cold and damp, carrying the faint scent of something wild and untamed. As I ventured deeper into the cavernous belly of the beast's den, the echo of my footsteps bounced back at me like whispers of creatures long gone. The light from my flashlight danced on the walls, casting shadows that twisted and turned, playing tricks on my eyes. I moved with caution, my senses heightened, every sound magnified in the stillness. The den was vast and empty, like a cathedral of nature untouched by the hands of time. As I reached the end of the cave, I saw it, an old, unused den. It was a hollowed-out crevice lined with dried grass and branches, the remnants of a large beast's bed. The den looked long abandoned, as though its occupant had not returned in years. Yet there was a lingering presence, a sense of a story untold, a life that once thrived here. The sight of the den filled me with a strange sense of melancholy. It was a stark reminder of the creature that once roamed these woods, a creature that was now lost to time. I reached into my pack and pulled out my map, marking the location of the cave. This was a piece of the puzzle, a clue in the mystery that was Project Woodland. I then turned my attention to the task at hand. I carefully collected Freddy's remains, each bone a grim testament to the boy's tragic end. The weight of them in my pack was a somber reminder of the reason I was here. This was not just an adventure, but a mission to uncover the truth, to bring justice, and to keep others safe. With Freddy's bones in my pack and the cave's location etched in my memory, I began my journey back. The forest seemed eerily silent, as if holding its breath. As I moved through the undergrowth, the echoes of my past encounters seemed to linger in the air, but I was more determined than ever. This was just the beginning, the first step in a long journey, the journey of Project Woodland. As I emerged from the forest, a new understanding of the world filled me. The eerie silence of the woods, the mysteries hidden within its shadows, they were all real, not just tales spun by the imaginative minds of storytellers. The unknown beasts of legends, the cryptids, they were all part of a reality that I was now a part of. This reality, this new world, it wasn't something to fear, but rather something to embrace. As I held the Z12 clearance badge in my hand, I understood the weight of the responsibility it carried. It wasn't just about identifying these unknown creatures, or neutralizing the threats they posed. It was about understanding them, understanding their existence, their place in our world. Project Woodland was more than just a mission. It was a quest for knowledge, a journey into the unknown. Each step, each creature we encountered, brought us closer to understanding the world we live in. The forest, with its low human population and remote location, it was their home. And we were the guests venturing into their world, trying to make sense of it all. The experience with Freddy, the young boy whose remains I had recovered, it was a grim reminder of the dangers that lurked in the forest. It was a lesson, a harsh one, but a lesson nonetheless. It reminded me of the importance of our mission, the importance of understanding these unknown creatures, of coexisting with them. As I reflected on my journey, on the beasts I had encountered, and the mysteries I had uncovered, I realized that this was just the beginning. There was so much more to learn, so much more to understand. Each day would bring with it new challenges, new mysteries, new beasts to encounter. But I was ready to face the unknown, ready to venture deeper into the forest, ready to uncover its secrets. Because that was my mission, that was my responsibility. This was just the beginning. The unknown awaited, and I was ready to face it head on. In the early morning of summer 1967, I received a peculiar order from Colonel Myers. An order that would lead me down a path I never thought I'd traverse. A path where the line between the natural and supernatural blurred into obscurity. I was tasked with finding a young woman named Chloe, who was considered a threat of an unprecedented nature. My orders were clear: locate and neutralize. I was to treat her as extremely dangerous. Given my experiences, I knew better than to question the orders from my superiors. So, equipped with our gear, we set off into the foreboding wilderness. Our destination? The last known location of Chloe. The other men and I were seasoned, our spirits hardened by the countless battles we had faced. Yet, even we felt a growing unease as we ventured deeper into the forest, its eerie stillness punctuated occasionally by the faint noises of wildlife. We came upon a peculiar campsite, nestled in the heart of the forest. At first glance, it was like any other, a smoldering fire, signs of recent occupancy. But a closer look revealed a darker reality. The fire pit was adorned with bizarre symbols etched into the ground, burnt remnants of suspicious objects scattered around it. The sight was enough to unnerve even the bravest among us. One of the men clutched his cross, whispering a silent prayer to a higher power. Perhaps he hoped that God would shield us from whatever unknown we were heading into, or perhaps it was just a desperate plea for courage in the face of the inexplicable. We pressed on, guided by a trail of scratches etched into the bark of the trees. It led us to a clearing, and there we found a door that seemed to lead into a cave. The sight was as ominous as it was intriguing. As we pushed the creaking door open, we braced ourselves for the unknown that lay ahead. With the last echo of the door's creak still hanging in the air, we switched on our torches and advanced into the cavernous maw. The air was heavy with a stench that could churn a stomach, a blend of the damp and decay that seemed to seep into our very pores. It was a darkness so profound it felt like stepping into another world. The deeper we ventured, the more our surroundings began to morph. The cave walls, once barren and cold, started to give way to an unexpected sight. It was as though we had stumbled upon a dwelling, an abode right in the belly of the earth. A table stood in the middle, surrounded by chairs, a bed tucked away in a corner, and a kitchen, complete with a cauldron bubbling over a fire. A wave of unease washed over us, an intuition that we were trespassing in a place where we didn't belong. The air was thick with an unseen presence, a feeling that we were being watched, scrutinized. It was as if the cave itself was alive, its breath cold on our necks, its heartbeat echoing in our ears. The silence was broken by a rustle, like the rustling of a cloak. Our hearts pounded in our chests as we spun around. And then, standing right behind us, was an old hag, cloaked in black, her eyes as dark as the night. Her skin was a patchwork of wrinkles, a roadmap of age and time. The smell that wafted off her was more pungent than the cave itself, a smell that could singe nostrils and linger in your senses. Her laughter pierced through the silence, a screeching cackle that bounced off the cave walls, a chant in an unknown language filling the air. As quickly as she had appeared, she vanished, leaving behind a chill that seemed to seep into our bones. The air in the cave became suddenly cold, and the eerie silence was broken only by our own ragged breaths. The bravado that had carried us this far seemed to evaporate, replaced by a primal fear that gnawed at our resolve. Yet, we knew we had to press on. Our mission was clear, and our duty unwavering. In the gloom, we spotted a frail figure huddled in the corner, a cage, and inside a young woman, her body frail and weakened. We recognized her instantly. It was Chloe. We freed her from the cage, her limp body barely able to stand. I slung her over my shoulder, her slight weight barely registering amidst the adrenaline rush. With Chloe in our custody, we began our cautious retreat. Every shadow seemed to dance menacingly. Every sound echoed ominously. We expected the hag to leap out at any moment to defend her lair, but she was nowhere to be seen. Perhaps our gunshots had deterred her, or maybe she was laying a trap. Either way, we had no choice but to press on, navigating the treacherous path back to the cave entrance. As we stepped out into the moonlight, a sense of relief washed over us. We had made it out of the cave, but our mission was far from over. Suddenly, Chloe began to thrash wildly. I dropped her in surprise, and she landed on the ground with a thud. Her head snapped back and her eyes, glowing a terrifying yellow, stared at us with a murderous gaze. We knew then that we were not out of danger. We had found Chloe, but she was not the innocent we had been sent to find. She was something much more dangerous, something much more terrifying, and she was free. Before we could react, Chloe darted into the forest, her monstrous howl echoing through the night. The forest swallowed her whole, as if she was a ghost vanishing into thin air. We were left standing, our hearts pounding in our chests, our minds racing with fear and confusion. We gave chase, pushing our bodies to their limits, our boots pounding against the hard forest floor. The shadows danced around us, playing tricks on our eyes, making it seem as if Chloe was everywhere and nowhere at the same time. But her speed was unmatched, a blur of movement under the moonlight that was always just out of reach. And then, out of nowhere, one of the men was gone. One moment he was there, running alongside us, and the next he was snatched away. His screams echoed through the forest, chilling us to our bones, growing fainter and fainter until they were swallowed by the night. We were left with a haunting silence, the forest seemingly holding its breath, waiting for our next move. The remaining soldier and I retaliated, our rifles raised, our fingers on the triggers. We fired into the darkness, the deafening sound of gunfire shattering the silence, but it was like trying to hit a ghost. Our bullets hit nothing but trees and air, never finding their mark. We continued to chase Chloe, our bodies fueled by adrenaline and fear. We knew that we were being hunted, that we were the prey in this deadly game. But we were soldiers, trained to fight, to survive. We refused to go down without a fight. As she lunged at the other soldier, I took my chance and fired at her, but she barely flinched. She was a force of nature, unstoppable, unforgiving. But we were not done yet. We had a mission to complete, and we would not stop until it was done. We would chase her to the ends of the earth if we had to, for we were soldiers, and this was our duty. Chloe was ruthless, tearing into the man as I continued to fire at her. Each shot echoed through the forest, a chilling testament to the battle we were waging. Yet, with each passing moment, it became clear that she was not like any enemy we had faced before. Her strength, her speed, her ferociousness, they were beyond human. It was as if she was possessed by some monstrous entity, turning her into a creature of the night. I continued to fire, my fingers numb from the cold and the recoil of my rifle. The others were gone, swallowed by the abyss of the forest, leaving only their echoes behind. I was alone facing this creature, this Chloe, with nothing but my wits and my weapon. And then, just as suddenly as she had attacked, she fell. Her body crumpled to the ground, her yellow eyes dimming as the life drained from her. I approached cautiously, my rifle still trained on her, but it was over. Chloe was neutralized. The silence that followed was deafening. I stood there in the middle of the forest, staring at the lifeless body of what was once a young woman. It was a chilling reminder of the horrors that lurk in the shadows, waiting to pounce when we least expect it. But as I stood there, I felt a pang of sorrow. Chloe was just a girl, lost and alone in this world, turned into a monster by forces beyond her control. She was a victim, just like the others, and in that moment, I realized the true horror of our mission. We were not heroes, we were executioners, sent to kill, not to save. We had completed our mission. Chloe was dead. But at what cost? The men I'd come with, the lives we had taken, the horrors we had witnessed, they were a heavy burden to bear, and yet the mission was far from over. The old hag, the one who had turned Chloe into this creature, she was still out there. Somewhere in the depths of the forest, she was waiting, biding her time. And as I stood there, I knew that our battle was far from over. The mission was over, Chloe was neutralized. Yet, the old hag was still out there, somewhere, waiting. I was home alone when a strange message appeared on my phone screen. It was late. The moon hung high in the sky, casting long, eerie shadows across my living room. The message was cryptic, directing me to a set of coordinates. No mission brief, no case file, just coordinates. This wasn't standard procedure. I'd served in the army for years and Colonel Myers always followed protocol. But this was completely out of the ordinary. My heart pounded in my chest, but I shook off the unease. I was a soldier and I had a mission to complete. So I prepared myself, pulling on my uniform, lacing up my boots. I grabbed my keys, my phone, and the message with the coordinates. The house was silent as I stepped out into the chilly night. The transport department was my next stop. Little did I know, the evening had only just started to get strange. At the transport department, a phone call changed everything. An unexpected turn of events, a sudden shift in the air. The man at the counter, once reluctant, now had an expression of uncertainty as he hung up the phone. Without another word, he gestured towards Helipad 3. As I boarded the helicopter, I could feel a sense of mystery enveloping the night. The pilot's voice echoed in the cabin. 2 hours and 10 minutes. 2 hours and 10 minutes to an unknown destination, to an uncertain fate. The rotors whirred to life, cutting through the stillness of the night. Up in the air, the world below seemed tranquil, oblivious to the uncertainty that lay ahead. The city lights faded into a distant blur as we ventured further into the unknown. Questions swirled in my mind, each one darker than the last. Where were we going? Why the sudden secrecy? But I knew better than to voice these thoughts. I glanced at the pilot, his face illuminated by the dim glow of the control panel. He was focused, unfazed by the uncertainty of our journey. I admired his professionalism, his dedication to the mission. But even he couldn't mask the hint of apprehension in his eyes. As the hours passed, the landscape below transformed from a bustling cityscape to a desolate expanse. The bright lights were replaced by a blanket of darkness, punctuated only by the occasional flicker of a distant town. Suddenly, the pilot's voice broke the silence. "We're approaching the coordinates." My heart pounded in my chest as I peered out of the window. Below us lay a solitary facility, a speck of civilization in the heart of Nevada, Texas. As the helicopter descended, I could make out the faint silhouette of a figure waiting for us. A sense of dread washed over me. What awaited me in that facility? What secrets lay within its walls? I could only speculate. 2 hours and 10 minutes later, we touched down in the middle of nowhere. The journey to the unknown had just begun. As I stepped off the helicopter, I was greeted by a chilling wind, a stark reminder of the mystery that lay ahead. The figure approached, his footsteps echoing in the silence of the night. My journey into the heart of the unknown had just begun. I was welcomed by a stern-faced captain and led into a vast building. The air was thick with mystery, and I could feel the gravity of my new mission. This was no ordinary operation. I was about to dive into the world of the unknown. Down the winding corridors, past steel doors and security checkpoints, we descended to level F. There, I was introduced to a man who would become my guide in this new, uncharted territory, Jerry, a cryptozoologist. The room was dimly lit, and as Jerry switched on an overhead projector, the world of cryptids, or as we call them, the unknowns, came to life. Jerry, with a passion that was both fascinating and unnerving, began to unravel the mysteries of these creatures. From the footprints of Bigfoot to the elusive fairies and dwarves. From the chilling howls of werewolves to the haunting presence of witches and wendigos, he covered it all. It was as if he was arming me with a new kind of weapon, knowledge, the known behaviors, the physical attributes, the gaps in our understanding. All of it was to prepare me for what lay ahead. My role, as Jerry explained, was not just to learn but to assist in cataloging these unknowns, to verify what we thought we knew, or to update our records with new information. A weekly rendezvous with Jerry was now on my schedule, a constant reminder of the strange path I had embarked on. As the images of these cryptids flickered on the screen, I found myself sharing my own encounter with a witch in the forest and a woman turned beast. Jerry's interest piqued at the witch's ability to disappear at will and her use of an altar for her dark magic. He insisted on visiting the scene of the encounter to gather more intel, collect samples. Despite my apprehensions, I agreed. The safety of daylight was our only shield against the unknown terrors that lurked in the forest. As we prepared to leave, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. Jerry's world was a world of impossibilities, and I was about to become a part of it. I shared my past encounters with a witch, hoping to shed some light on the unknowns. I told Jerry about a chilling experience I had in a dense, eerie forest where I encountered a witch. The woman had been transformed into a terrifying beast, her eyes glinting with an unnatural, malicious light. The witch had a strange ability to vanish at will, and she practiced her dark magic at an altar hidden deep in the woods. Jerry's interest piqued at my story. He leaned forward, his eyes wide with fascination and a hint of dread. He suggested a field trip to the exact spot of my encounter, hoping to gather more intel and possibly collect samples. I was hesitant. The memory of the witch encounter still sent chills down my spine. I tried to dissuade him, but he insisted. "We'll go during daylight," he assured. "It's the safest time." I found his confidence unsettling, but his determination was infectious. I agreed, but not without a heavy sense of foreboding. I could still feel the witch's cold, haunting gaze on me, could still hear her haunting laughter echoing in my ears. But Jerry was undeterred. He was intrigued by the witch's ability to disappear, her use of an altar for her magic. He wanted to see it all for himself. He wanted to understand, to learn, to catalog these unknowns. I couldn't help but feel a sense of dread creeping up on me. The witch was not like any other unknown I had encountered. She was powerful, dangerous, and unpredictable. But Jerry was right. We needed to learn more about her. We needed to understand her powers, her motives, her weaknesses. So with a heavy heart, I found myself preparing for a return to that haunting forest, to the very spot where I had encountered the witch. I had a feeling, a gut instinct, that we were stepping into dangerous territory, that we were playing with fire. Reluctantly, I agreed to return to the scene of the encounter. I had a feeling we were playing with fire. The hike back to the witch's lair was unsettling. Everything was eerily quiet. A sense of dread loomed over us as we approached the cave. The door that I clearly remembered was nowhere to be found. Had I imagined it, or had it simply vanished? As if sensing my confusion, Jerry, armed with a peculiar device, began scanning the rocks. The device hummed and buzzed in his hands, reacting to something unseen. Its sporadic noises broke the silence of the cavern, echoing off the walls, creating an eerie symphony of its own. Jerry moved his device around, its static noise growing louder over specific spots. I recognized these spots. They were where I had seen the table, the chairs, the cauldron. Was it reacting to some residual magic, or perhaps some spectral remnants of the witch's belongings? I questioned Jerry about the strange phenomenon. His response sent chills down my spine. He suggested that witches might have the ability to disappear during the day, or even shift into a different dimension. The thought was mind-boggling. Were we dealing with entities that could manipulate time and space at will? The cave suddenly felt a lot colder. The idea of unseen forces lurking around us, capable of slipping in and out of our reality, was unsettling. Could the witch be observing us from another realm? Or was she simply hidden somewhere, waiting for the night to fall? Jerry continued his work, unperturbed. He meticulously collected samples, each rock, each patch of dirt potentially hiding secrets of the unknown. His dedication was admirable, but I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease. The cave, the missing door, Jerry's device, and his theory. It all seemed too surreal. As we left the cave, I found myself questioning everything. Was Jerry just a madman rambling about the impossible? Or were we really onto something? Were we on the verge of uncovering truths that could change our understanding of the world? The thought of witches slipping into different dimensions was overwhelming. Was Jerry insane? Or were we onto something? Back at base, sleep eluded me. The day's revelations echoed in my mind like a haunting melody. Jerry's words, his theories about witches disappearing during the day, it all seemed so far-fetched. Yet, I had witnessed the inexplicable disappearance of the witch's lair. I found myself questioning Jerry's sanity. His talk of cryptids and alternate dimensions was the stuff of science fiction. But then again, wasn't what I had experienced in that forest just as unbelievable? My reality, as I knew it, had been turned on its head. The quiet of the night was punctuated by my restless thoughts. I pondered over the missing door, the static noises from Jerry's device, the vanishing witch. Was it all really possible, or was I losing my grip on reality? As I lay awake, a chilling thought crossed my mind. If witches could disappear, what else was out there that we couldn't see? On an eerie evening, an unexpected mission landed on my desk: to track down and capture a Wendigo. As a retired Army captain, I've been tasked with missions of all sorts, but this one was different. It was a creature of horror, a Wendigo, a giant supernatural entity with an insatiable desire for human flesh, growing larger with every meal. Its monstrous nature was not the only thing to be wary of, for humans could transform into such creatures if they succumbed to greed, resorted to cannibalism, or simply spent too much time in their dreadful company. I wasn't going into this alone. 3 brave men, each with their own strengths and fears, joined me. We were a team, and together our chances of succeeding in this perilous endeavor seemed promising. A suicide mission it may have been, but we were prepared to face whatever horrors lay ahead. Our mission began deep within the forest, a known hotspot for Wendigo activity. The inky blackness of the woods was as intimidating as the creature we were meant to hunt, but our night vision equipment cut through the darkness, allowing us to navigate the treacherous landscape. The forest was eerily silent, save for the distant screams of panic. It was faint, but clear. It was coming from a nearby campsite. We were drawn towards it, each step filled with dread and anticipation. As we got closer, the forest erupted with the bone-chilling roar of a beast. We could smell the stench of death in the air, a foul odor that confirmed our fears. It was a Wendigo. The towering monster stood before us, its gaunt figure and ashen complexion an embodiment of death and corruption. It was a sight that would send chills down the bravest of spines. But we were here for a reason. We took aim, careful not to kill, for our mission was to capture. We found ourselves dropped in the middle of a forest, armed with our night vision and the faint screams of panic guiding us. As we got closer, a foul stench of death hung in the air. We knew we were in the presence of a Wendigo. Emerging from the shadows, the creature towered over us, its form monstrous in the dim light. Its body was a grotesque parody of the human form, gaunt and skeletal, its skin stretched taut over protruding bones. The ash-gray complexion of the creature was reminiscent of decay, its eyes sunk deep within their sockets, devoid of any semblance of life or humanity. The Wendigo's lips, or what remained of them, were tattered and bloody, its flesh rotting and suppurating. It exuded a potent aura of death and corruption, a testament to its unnatural existence. Despite its monstrous appearance, there was something undeniably human about the creature, a chilling reminder of its origins. As we confronted the beast, it regarded us with an eerie intelligence. It was as if it understood us, our mission, our fear. A startling thought struck us. Was it possible that it could communicate? But before we could ponder this further, we had to focus on our mission: capture, not kill. We raised our weapons, aiming for the creature's limbs, attempting to incapacitate it without inflicting fatal damage. But the Wendigo was faster than we had anticipated. Despite its hulking size, it moved with an agility that belied its grotesque form. With a bone-chilling roar, it darted into the forest, disappearing into the shadows. We were left in the clearing, the echo of its roar still ringing in our ears. We scanned the darkness, our night vision goggles piercing the inky blackness. But there was no sign of the Wendigo. It had vanished, as quickly and unexpectedly as it had appeared. In a flash of movement, the beast darted into the forest, leaving us scanning the darkness for any sign of it. Coming to, I found myself face down in the dirt. The aftermath of our encounter spread out around me. I groaned, slowly pushing myself up onto shaky legs. The world swam before my eyes, but I forced myself to focus. The taste of iron filled my mouth, and I touched my hand to my face, coming away with a slick of crimson. I blinked away the blood and the dizziness, and began to truly take in the sight of the carnage around me. My heart dropped as I saw the bodies of my comrades, their forms mutilated beyond recognition. My breath hitched in my throat as I looked up to see half a torso hanging from a tree, the gruesome sight causing a surge of nausea to roll through me. I swallowed hard, forcing down the bile and turning my eyes away. I was alone, all alone in the eerie stillness of the forest. The only sounds were the distant hoot of an owl and the rustling of leaves underfoot as I moved. I felt a shiver crawl up my spine, not from the cool night air, but from the crushing sense of loneliness and fear. But then my attention was drawn to a series of footprints in the dirt. They were large, much larger than any human foot, and they led away from the scene of destruction. A glimmer of hope ignited within me. Perhaps one of my team had survived. I had to find out. I had to follow the trail. I moved quickly, my training kicking in despite the pain that lanced through my body with each step. The footprints led me deeper into the forest, the trees looming ominously overhead. My heart pounded in my chest, the adrenaline pumping through my veins, giving me the strength to push on. Finally, a figure appeared, a young ranger who I promptly armed and enlisted in my mission. A burning sensation drew my attention to a scratch on my arm, the mark of the Wendigo. The mark seared my flesh like a brand, a stark reminder of the monster's touch. My heart pounded in my chest as realization struck me. I'd been touched by the Wendigo, and now I was in danger of becoming one myself. The world around me seemed to distort, my senses heightened to an almost painful degree. The forest, once familiar, now felt alien and threatening. The whispering of the leaves sounded like distant screams, the rustling of animals akin to the shuffling of unseen horrors. It was as if the forest had become a living nightmare. Suddenly, the taste of copper filled my mouth. I spat, horrified to find my saliva tainted with blood. Was this the beginning of the transformation? The insatiable hunger for human flesh that Jerry had warned about? I could feel an unfamiliar hunger gnawing at the pit of my stomach, a hunger that sent chills down my spine. The ranger, a young man with wide, frightened eyes, looked at me questioningly. I could see the fear in his gaze, the unspoken question. Was I turning into a monster? I couldn't let him stay. For his safety, and for my own sanity, I had to send him back. With a shaky hand, I handed him my spare radio, instructing him to call for help. I urged him to leave, to get as far away from me as possible. As he disappeared into the undergrowth, I could only hope he would make it back safely. Alone now, I turned my attention back to the task at hand, the Wendigo. I had to find it, had to defeat it. Maybe, just maybe, killing it would stop my transformation. It was a long shot, but it was all I had. I could feel my mind slipping, the forest closing in around me. But I pushed on, following the trail of destruction left by the Wendigo. The smell of death and decay grew stronger, a grim beacon guiding me to my quarry. After what felt like an eternity of tracking, there it was, wounded but still formidable, the Wendigo. Even in its weakened state, the Wendigo was a formidable opponent. Its eyes, hollow and deep-set, glowed with a predatory light that sent shivers down my spine. Its claws, though dulled from our earlier encounter, were still sharp enough to shred the thickest armor. And its strength, diminished but far from gone, was still enough to toss me around like a rag doll. I charged at the beast, pulling on every ounce of strength I had left. Its roar echoed through the forest, a chilling symphony of despair and anger. We clashed, each blow more brutal than the last. It was a dance of death, our movements as fluid as they were deadly. Every time I struck, the beast retaliated with a vengeance that spoke volumes about its will to survive. Yet I refused to back down. My body screamed in protest, each wound a testament to the Wendigo's ferocity. Yet I knew I had to press on. I could feel the scratches from our previous encounter burning on my skin. A stark reminder of the fate that awaited me if I failed. The thought of turning into one of these monsters fueled my determination. In the end, it was the Wendigo's hubris that led to its downfall. In its arrogance, it underestimated the resolve of a dying man. With a final desperate lunge, I drove my blade deep into its heart. The beast let out a deafening roar before collapsing onto the forest floor, its life force ebbing away. As I stood over the fallen Wendigo, its breaths grew shallow, and its eyes dimmed. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, it spoke. The word it uttered sent a chill down my spine. Clive. The name echoed in the silence of the forest, a final puzzle piece in a mystery far from solved. As I stumbled away from the lifeless beast, I couldn't help but wonder, who or what is Clive? In the cold, quiet depths of Sector 12, I was summoned for a mission. This wasn't an ordinary task, though. It was something far more chilling, something that would embed itself into my memory forever. I was assigned to Project Woodland, a covert operation shrouded in mystery and dread. Sector, a harmless military division, harbored secrets darker than the night sky, and Project Woodland, the secret program I was now a part of, was the darkest of them all. There was a sense of apprehension that hung like a shroud over the entire assignment. Whispers of a malevolent spirit haunting the forest, tales of innocent campers, found lifeless under the towering trees, their faces frozen in terror. Something wicked lurked in the shadows of the woodland, something that hunted under the cover of darkness. As experienced army captain, I had faced many opponents, but this was unlike any I had encountered before. This was not an opponent that could be conquered with bullets and bravery alone. An entity that thrived in the shadows, an entity that thrived on fear. The forest, once a sanctuary of serenity and beauty, had turned into a breeding ground for terror. Stories of the mysterious deaths of innocent campers had spread like wildfire, instilling fear into the hearts of the bravest men. The victims were found in the most remote parts of the forest, their bodies cold and lifeless, their faces etched with a look of sheer terror. It was evident that something was hunting them. Something wasn't human. As I prepared to embark on my mission, an undeniable dread washed over me. I was about to confront an enemy like no other, an enemy that lurked in the shadows, an enemy that was not of this world. I was about to step into the unknown, into the heart of the forest, into the lair of the spirit. I ventured into the dense, haunting forest. The air grew colder, and an ominous feeling began to creep up my spine. With each step deeper into the woodland, a sense of dread washed over me. The forest seemed like an endless labyrinth of towering trees, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers against the moonlit sky. The silence was eerie, broken only by the rustling of leaves and my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. As I ventured further, a chill ran down my spine. I had the distinct feeling of being watched, of eyes piercing through the darkness, observing my every move. The air grew heavy, suffocating, as if the forest itself closing in on me. Suddenly the underbrush rustled and a figure appeared. It was no ordinary creature of the night, but a shadowy form, its presence darker than the blackest night. Its eyes glowed with a sinister light, sending a shiver down my spine. This was the entity that had been haunting the forest. This was the dark shadow. Before I could react, the shadow lunged at me. It was like being hit by a wave of icy cold wind, taking my breath away. I felt it seeping into my skin, my bones, my very soul. It was as if I was drowning in the darkness, sinking deeper and deeper into an abyss. The terror was overwhelming, yet I could do nothing to resist. I was not facing it, I was becoming it. My world twisted and distorted. I saw through the eyes of the shadow, felt its insatiable hunger for power, its relentless desire to possess. I screamed, but my voice was lost in the void. I was no longer myself. I was the shadow. The last thing I remember is an intense burning sensation, as if my insides were on fire. I tried to fight it, to push the shadow out, but it was too late. My vision blurred, my muscles gave way, and I fell to my knees. Suddenly a sharp pain coursed. As I came to my senses, I found myself in a quaint, dimly lit cabin, confronting an elderly native Indian man. The native man, his features deeply etched with wisdom and years, unfolded an ancient tale, a story predating time itself. He narrated the tale of a sinister shadow, a malevolent spirit that had terrorized these forests for hundreds of years. The spirit, as he clarified, was an incessant entity, forever seeking a vessel, a host sturdy enough to accommodate malevolent energy. The spirit had found its equal in you, he voiced, an individual toughened by several years of military service, a man whose spirit had been molded in the crucibles of warfare. He informed me that the sinister shadow had located its ideal host, and it had no plans of releasing it. But the native Indian man was not just a raconteur. He was a shaman, a spiritual knight, bestowed with the duty of safeguarding his people, his territory, and all those who fell prey to the sinister shadow. He had recognized the signals, deciphered the prophecies, had arrived just in the nick of time. With a rock-solid resolve gleaming in his eyes, the shaman initiated the exorcism. The ambiance in the quaint cabin became dense with tension as he recited powerful archaic incantations, his voice oscillating like the cadence of a primitive drumbeat. The shaman moved around me, his actions fluid and accurate, his hands creating elaborate designs in the atmosphere. The room seemed to reverberate with energy as the shaman's incantations grew louder, more fervent. I could sense the sinister shadow squirming within me, resisting, retaliating. But the shaman was unwavering, his voice resonating through the cabin, his powerful words piercing the conflict between the shaman and the sinister shadow intensified. A mute war waged in the recesses of my soul. The tension was tangible, the air loaded with an electric energy, the result teetering on the edge. With a concluding incantation, the room descended into silence, and I felt a sense of relief. The sinister shadow had been exorcised, expelled back to the darkness from where it had emerged. A battle had been conquered, but the war was still far from resolved. Having escaped the clutch of the menacing shadow, I felt a mix of relief and a residual curiosity. My heart was still racing. My skin still experienced the ghostly touch of the shadow's freezing grip. I was alive indeed, but not without scars. The native Indian man, my rescuer, my exorcist, settled by the fire, his wise eyes mirroring the rhythmic dance of the flames. In a voice as ancient as the surrounding forest, he started to unravel the bone-chilling truth that would forever reshape my comprehension of my ordeal. He revealed that the menacing shadow had been persistent in its mission. It had been on a relentless pursuit, hunting for a body, a host, to execute its malevolent designs. It had targeted the unsuspecting campers, but their spirits were too weak, too brittle. They couldn't resist it. His words weighed heavy in the atmosphere, a palpable reminder of the terror we had both encountered. I paid heed, my blood freezing as the realization began to slither in like a snake in grass. He continued explaining how I was different. My spirit had been steeled by the inferno of battle, toughened by the challenges I had undergone. I was robust enough to contain the shadow, to keep it at bay. I was its selected vessel. The seemed to pause, the wind quieting, its rustling, the trees frozen in the wake of this revelation. My world spun, my reality transformed. I was more than just a survivor, more than a victim. I was the chosen one, the intended vessel of the menacing shadow. My mind sprinted, my thoughts a tornado of fear, interest, and a peculiar sensation of destiny. The menacing shadow hadn't just attacked me, it had picked me. Turner, you won't believe this, but I need your help. The voice on the other end of the line was unmistakable. It was John, an old friend and arranger who had always been skeptical of the supernatural. Now his voice echoed unease, setting the stage for a tale that would chill even the most hardened souls. John told me about a man named William who had wandered into the eerie depths of Oak Haven Forest. William was on a mission, driven by a past tragedy. His son had vanished years ago, and he was convinced that a monster, a creature of the dark, was the culprit. "A monster, John? Are you sure?" I asked, my skepticism ringing clear. I had heard many stories during my years in the army, but this was something different. John's response was grim and filled with a certainty that sent a shiver of unease down my spine. "I wish I wasn't, but this is no ordinary situation." He explained how William's son had disappeared without a trace, leaving a father haunted by loss and consumed by a need for justice. The forest of Oak Haven, notorious for its dark reputation, was where William believed the monster resided. I had heard the tales, but had always brushed them off as mere superstition. Now I found myself agreeing to help, drawn into a mystery that was as chilling as it was intriguing. As we delved deeper into the case, we discovered that William was no ordinary man. He was a former soldier, skilled and disciplined. His determination to find the monster was unsettling, hinting at a darkness that was as much a part of him as the grief he carried. The more I learned about William and his quest, the more I realized that we were stepping into unknown territory. This mission was unlike anything I had ever encountered. The eerie atmosphere of Oak Haven Forest, the unsettling stories, and the grim determination of a grieving father formed a chilling backdrop to a tale that was only just beginning. "I wish I wasn't, but this is no ordinary situation." John's words echoed in my mind as we prepared to step into the heart of the forest. The call that started it all had been a harbinger of the chilling journey that lay ahead. We reached the rendezvous point in Oak Haven, and we were joined by an FBI agent named Dennis. His reputation preceded him as a man who had seen the unexplainable, the unusual, and the downright eerie. Dennis had a knack for the paranormal, a skill set that was proving to be more valuable than we could have ever imagined. Our meeting point was shrouded in the foreboding aura of Oak Haven Forest. The trees stood tall, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers, casting long, eerie shadows. The air was thick with an unsettling silence, a silence that seemed to echo with the whispers of the unknown. This was the playground of the monster that had stolen William's son, a creature that existed in the realm of nightmares. William was a man haunted, his eyes carrying the weight of loss and determination. His face, etched with years of grief and resolve, told a story more chilling than any ghost tale. As we gathered around him, he began to unravel his tale, a tale that had led him on a relentless pursuit of the monster in Oak Haven. He spoke of years spent in the shadows of this forest, collecting stories, eyewitness accounts, and evidence that pointed to the existence of a creature that defied all logic and understanding. William's voice quivered as he spoke of the night his son was taken, the terror in his son's eyes as a monstrous figure dragged him into the darkness, the futile chase, and the echoing silence that followed. It was a story that sent chills down our spines and cemented our resolve. His research was not just a collection of tales, but a cryptic guide to the monster's lair. He had traced patterns, followed leads, and pieced together a puzzle that had led him back to Oak Haven time and time again. His conviction was unwavering. The creature was real, and it was still out there. As we prepared for our journey into the heart of darkness, William's words echoed in our minds. The forest seemed to close in around us, its secrets lurking in the shadows. Despite the fear gnawing at our guts, we were ready. Ready to face the monster, ready to unearth the truth, ready to step into the realm of the unknown. He had become convinced that the creature was still lurking in the forest, and he was determined to face it head-on. And so, under the watchful eyes of Oak Haven, we steeled ourselves for what lay ahead. We embarked on our journey into the heart of Oak Haven, armed with weapons and flashlights. The forest loomed ominously before us, a vast, brooding wilderness that swallowed the sunlight and made the world outside seem like a distant memory. The dense canopy rustled softly, whispering secrets only the trees knew. Our path was a winding trail of shadows and uncertainty, leading us deeper into the heart of the forest. As we journeyed on, the forest began to reveal its unsettling nature. Strange, unearthly sounds echoed through the woods, winding their way around the gnarled trunks and weaving through the undergrowth. Each rustle, each crackle, each whisper seemed to hint at something lurking just out of sight. The shadows danced and shifted, teasing our senses and playing tricks on our minds. Our footsteps were muffled against the forest floor, the only sign of our intrusion into this ancient realm. The air was thick with tension, a tangible sense of unease that clung to our skin and prickled at the back of our necks. Dennis, the FBI agent, reminded us to remain cautious. We were venturing into the unknown, possibly even supernatural. As the sun began to sink behind the trees, the forest seemed to come alive in a whole new, eerie way. The once familiar shapes twisted into grotesque forms, and the shadows grew longer, reaching out with dark tendrils that seemed to grasp at our very souls. Nightfall in Oakhaven was no ordinary darkness. It was a living, breathing entity filled with whispers and secrets from a world unseen. We chose to set up camp as the last rays of daylight faded, the forest around us swallowed by an all-encompassing darkness. The light from our flashlights cut through the night, creating a small island of safety in the sea of shadows. But even within this circle of light, we felt the forest watching us, waiting. Our flashlights casting long, wavering shadows that danced around us, whispering tales of the unknown and setting the stage for the chilling encounter that was yet to come. Then, as we huddled around the campfire, a guttural growl pierced the night. The sound was chilling, a deep, resonant growl that seemed to echo from the very bowels of the forest. It was a sound that was not of this world, a sound that promised unspeakable horrors lurking in the shadows. The growl was long and drawn out, a low, menacing rumble that echoed through the trees and sent a chill down our spines. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, a disorienting cacophony of sound that left us with an overwhelming sense of dread. We froze, our hearts pounding in our chests, as we strained our ears for any other sounds. The forest was eerily silent, the usual nighttime chorus of insects and animals replaced by a deafening quiet that was even more unsettling. The only sound was the crackling of the campfire, its flickering light casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to take on a life of their own. William's face was pale, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and anticipation. He had waited for this moment for so long, his entire life consumed by his quest for revenge, and now the monster he had been hunting was finally within his reach. He stood slowly, his breath ragged as he stared into the darkness. His hand tightened around the handle of his weapon, his knuckles white with the effort. He was a man on the edge, caught between his burning desire for justice and the very real fear of what he was about to face. The rest of us could only watch in stunned silence as William took a step toward the forest, his weapon raised and ready. We were in uncharted territory, dealing with a creature that was beyond our comprehension. The fear was palpable, a tangible force that seemed to press down on us, suffocating us with its weight. And then a sound pierced the silence. A child's voice, faint and haunting, echoed through the trees. It was a desperate plea, a call for help that seemed to resonate from the very heart of the forest. We froze in our tracks, the voice washing over us like a chilling wind. I glanced at William, his face ashen, his eyes wide with recognition and disbelief. The voice, it was his son's, reaching out to him from the abyss. A shiver ran down my spine. The forest, once filled with the innocent chirping of crickets, now echoed with the ghostly voice of a lost child. A lump formed in my throat as I watched William, his body trembling, his hands clenched tightly around the photo of his son. His gaze was fixed on the dark expanse of the forest, his heart echoing the desperate call of his child. And so we ventured deeper into the forest, led by the voice of a child who was no longer with us. William's face turned ashen as he recognized the voice. It was his son's voice calling to him from beyond the grave. We followed the eerie voice, our hearts pounding in our chests. The forest, once familiar and inviting, had transformed into a labyrinth of shadows and whispers. Each rustle, each snap of a twig, amplified our fears, our flashlights barely penetrating the gloom. The towering trees seemed to lean closer, their branches reaching out like skeletal arms, as if trying to ensnare us in a web of dread. The voice grew louder, more desperate, a phantom cry in the heart of the wilderness. William's face was a mask of determination and despair. The voice of his son, lost but not forgotten, was a beacon in the darkness, guiding us deeper into the heart of the forest. We ventured further, the forest closing in around us, a claustrophobic cocoon of foliage and fear. The air grew colder, the silence deeper, broken only by the haunting voice that echoed through the trees. It was as if the forest itself were holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable, and then we saw it. Standing in a small clearing, bathed in an otherworldly glow, the creature was a nightmare come to life. It towered over us, a grotesque silhouette against the moonlit sky. It was a hulking figure, its form shifting and indistinct like a shadow given life. Its eyes glowed a fiery red, piercing the darkness, and its teeth, gnarled and sharp, glistened in the dim light. The sight of the creature was enough to freeze the blood in our veins. Its presence was oppressive, a heavy weight in the pit of our stomachs. But there was something else, too, a sense of profound sadness, a raw, primal grief that resonated with our own. We stood there, transfixed, caught in the creature's malevolent gaze. The voice had stopped, replaced by an uneasy silence that hung over the clearing. The creature's eyes never left us, its gaze unblinking, its intent unknown. It was a grotesque, hulking figure with glowing red eyes and gnarled teeth. William raised his weapon, his hands trembling with a mixture of rage and grief. His voice echoed through the chilling silence of the forest, a thunderous accusation that seemed to shake the very air. "You took my son from me." His shout was followed by a brief silence, the forest holding its breath in anticipation. Then a bone-chilling howl erupted from the creature. It was a sound that resonated with such raw, primal energy that it seemed to shake the very foundation of the forest. The towering trees trembled, their branches rustling in response to the creature's agony. The ground beneath our feet vibrated, as if the earth itself was reacting to the howl. The oppressive darkness seemed to recoil, the shadows twisting and shifting as the howl echoed through the night. The creature's form began to distort, its outline blurring and shifting as if it was being torn apart by the sheer force of its own pain. It was a sight that defied reality, a grotesque dance of shadow and light that was both horrifying and mesmerizing. The howl continued, a haunting melody that seemed to resonate within the very core of our beings. It was a sound that was both terrifying and heart-wrenching, a lament that echoed the grief and loss that had brought us to this haunting confrontation. And then, just as abruptly as it had begun, the howl ceased. The creature's form began to unravel, its once solid figure dissolving into a swirling mass of darkness. With a final anguished wail, it seemed to implode, the darkness consuming it until there was nothing left but a trail of ethereal mist. The monster's form began to distort and unravel, and with a final anguished wail it dissolved into the darkness. The silence that followed was deafening, a stark contrast to the cacophony that had just echoed through the forest. The creature was gone, vanquished. The forest seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, the oppressive darkness lifting as if a heavy weight had been lifted from its shoulders. The confrontation was over. Our hearts were still pounding in our chests, a testament to the terror and awe we had just experienced. We were left stunned and bewildered, unable to comprehend what we had just witnessed. The forest, which moments ago was a stage for our bone-chilling encounter, now seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. The eerie sounds that once filled the air had vanished, replaced by the familiar symphony of the night. Crickets chirped, leaves rustled gently in the breeze, and the forest, once an embodiment of our fears, returned to its natural state. We trudged back to our camp, our footsteps heavy with the weight of what we had experienced. The campfire, which had been our beacon in the dark, now seemed insignificant against the vastness of the forest. We sat around it, exchanging glances, our faces etched with shock, disbelief, and a strange sense of relief. William stared into the fire, his eyes reflecting the dancing flames. The monster that had haunted his dreams, the embodiment of his worst nightmare, was gone. His son's voice, that faint, haunting echo, had been silenced. There was a certain closure in knowing that the creature was no longer a threat, and yet it did little to alleviate the pain of his loss. Dennis, the ever-composed FBI agent, seemed shaken. The encounter had left him questioning his understanding of the world, and the reality he had once known seemed distant and unreal. The forest, the creature, the echoing voice, none of it fit into the realm of his comprehension. As for me, Sergeant Turner, I sat there, my mind grappling with the events of the night. The forest, I realized, held secrets that were beyond human understanding. We had come face to face with the unknown, and it had left us with a profound sense of awe and fear. The monster that had haunted Oakhaven had been vanquished, and William had finally found closure for the loss of his son. But as we sat there, under the vast starlit sky, the forest whispered its secrets, reminding us that there were mysteries that were yet to be unraveled, stories yet to be told, and horrors yet to be faced. As we made our way out of the forest, we couldn't help but wonder about the mysteries that still lingered within Oakhaven. The chilling echoes of the child's voice still hung in the air, a haunting reminder of the tragedy that birthed the monster. The forest, once seen as a haven of natural beauty, now held a more sinister allure. Its twisted undergrowth and towering trees bore silent witness to the horrors we had encountered. The legend of the monster, born out of a father's grief, had become a reality for us. We had seen it with our own eyes, its grotesque form etched into our memories. Its haunting howl still echoed in our ears, a chilling reminder of the unearthly power it possessed. The creature was a tangible manifestation of the pain and sorrow that had consumed William, a chilling testament to the depth of his loss. As we trudged through the forest, the weight of our encounter bore heavily upon us. We were no longer the same men who had first set foot in Oakhaven. We had been touched by the unknown, our realities shattered, our perceptions forever altered. The boundaries of what we thought possible had been stretched beyond recognition. We were left with a profound sense of awe and terror, a feeling that would linger long after we left the forest behind. We emerged from the forest, the early morning light casting long shadows across the landscape. The world outside Oakhaven seemed strangely mundane, untouched by the horrors we had witnessed. We were a band of survivors, bound together by a shared experience that defied explanation. As we left Oakhaven behind, we carried with us a sense of unease. The forest had revealed its secrets to us, but at a cost. We had come face to face with the unknown, and it had left us with a profound sense of awe and terror that would stay with us for the rest of our lives. In the heart of a vast, eerie forest, a chilling wind whispered through the trees, casting long, sinister shadows on the forest floor. An urgent distress call had reached me, Sergeant Turner. A park ranger, Sarah, had vanished while searching for a lost child's dog, a loyal German shepherd named Max. The dog had disappeared near a mysterious grove, a place the locals whispered was cursed. With the sun setting, I set out on a mission to find Sarah. The forest, dense and foreboding, seemed to close in around me. The deeper I ventured, following Sarah's path, the more the sense of unease grew. The grove, a place of twisted trees and gnarled branches, loomed ahead. The rustling leaves whispered an ominous warning. The grove, cursed and feared, was now before me. Its silent, dark presence seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. The forest seemed to close in around me, and every rustling leaf felt like an ominous whisper. I reached the cursed grove, where the trees were twisted and gnarled, their branches contorted into grotesque shapes. As I ventured deeper, the forest seemed to take on a life of its own. The leaves rustled ominously, the wind howling through the gnarled boughs, whispering secrets of a forgotten past. This was not a place for the living. It was as if time itself had stopped, surrendering to the unyielding grasp of a malevolent presence that pervaded the air. The grove's curse was palpable, a chilling reminder of lost souls and tales of horror whispered by the locals. As I pressed on, the cold grip of fear tightened around my heart. The forest's eerie silence was broken only by the creaking of ancient trees and the distant echo of my own footsteps. But I was not alone. A feeling of being watched, of being hunted, lingered in the air. The forest had eyes, and they were on me. Suddenly, I stumbled upon a scene of chaos. An abandoned campsite scattered with Sarah's belongings. Her tent was torn to shreds, the remnants flapping mournfully in the wind. Her backpack lay nearby, its contents strewn about as if in a violent struggle. Her radio, our only link to the outside world, smashed to pieces. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. Sarah was an experienced ranger, well versed in the dangers of the wilderness. Whatever had done this was no ordinary predator. It was something far more sinister, something that lurked in the shadows of the cursed grove. I picked up a photo from the wreckage, a picture of Sarah with Max, the lost German shepherd. Her smile seemed to mock the grim reality of our situation. I clutched the photo close, a grim reminder of what was at stake. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. This was no ordinary search and rescue. I was dealing with something beyond comprehension, something malevolent and supernatural that had taken Sarah. Panic set in as I realized something malevolent had taken her. I was in the heart of the cursed grove, and the real horror was just beginning. My training and instincts told me that I was not alone in the woods. A shiver ran down my spine, the hair on the back of my neck standing on end. The eerie silence was punctuated by the distant, haunting hoot of an owl, and the wind seemed to carry whispers of foreboding. The unseen terror was tangible, a malevolent force that seemed to pulse with the very heartbeat of the forest. Every shadow seemed to conceal a lurking dread, every rustle of the leaves a threatening presence. Yet, I couldn't see it, couldn't pin it down. It was an unseen terror, a phantom that existed on the periphery of my senses. The forest, once a familiar and comforting presence, had turned into a living nightmare, pulsating with an energy that was as ancient as it was malevolent. I could feel the forest warning me, urging me to retreat. The trees seemed to shudder, their branches creaking in the wind. The leaves rustled ominously, whispering words of caution. The very air seemed to grow colder, the wind carrying an icy chill that seeped into my bones. The forest was alive, and it was watching me. Yet I pushed forward, my determination unwavering. Fear gnawed at the edges of my mind, but I shoved it aside. Sarah was out there, somewhere in this cursed forest. She was alone, terrified, and in danger. I could not, would not abandon her. I thought of her frightened face, her desperate pleas for help echoing in the darkness. The thought of her in the clutches of this unseen terror spurred me on. I moved deeper into the forest, every step taking me further into the heart of the unseen terror. The forest seemed to grow darker, the shadows lengthening and twisting into grotesque shapes. The unseen terror was all around me now, a palpable force that seemed to close in from all sides. Yet I refused to falter. I would face this terror, confront the unseen, and find Sarah, but I couldn't. Sarah was out there somewhere, and I would not abandon her. Finally, I heard a faint, desperate cry for help. The sound cut through the eerie silence, a beacon in the enveloping darkness. It was Sarah's voice, a trembling plea carried on the wind, echoing from the heart of the cursed grove. It was a sound that propelled me forward, through the thick undergrowth and beneath the gnarled branches of the ancient trees. The forest seemed to tighten its grip, its shadows growing darker and more sinister with each step. But I pushed on, driven by the desperation in Sarah's voice. The whispers of the trees grew louder, their warnings growing more urgent, but I blocked them out, focusing only on the distant cry that guided my path. As I ventured deeper into the grove, the air grew heavier, the darkness more oppressive. I felt a chill creep up my spine, an instinctual warning of the horror that awaited me. But I couldn't turn back, not when Sarah's life hung in the balance. And then I saw her, bound to a tree in the heart of the grove, her face pale and etched with terror, her eyes wide with fear yet filled with hope at my arrival. But it was the scene that surrounded her that sent a wave of dread coursing through my veins. Surrounding her were grotesque, shadowy figures with twisted limbs and hollow eyes. They were not human, not even remotely. Their forms shifted and swirled in the darkness, an unholy gathering of ancient, malevolent entities. Their voices rose in an eerie chant, a language that seemed as old as the grove itself. The sight of them sent a jolt of terror through me, but I swallowed my fear, knowing that I was Sarah's only hope. I steeled myself, ready to confront the horrors that hid within the heart of the cursed grove. I would not abandon Sarah to this nightmarish fate. I would fight, until my last breath if necessary, to bring her home. Surrounding her were grotesque, shadowy figures with twisted limbs and hollow eyes. They were the embodiment of the forest's curse, the unseen terror that had haunted these woods for generations. And now, I stood face to face with them, ready to challenge the darkness. I fought through the darkness and confronted the creatures, my flashlight cutting through their malevolent forms. The beam of light felt like a sword in my hand, a beacon slicing through the oppressive gloom, illuminating the grotesque faces of the entities that lurked there. As the light washed over them, I could see their true forms. They were not creatures of flesh and blood, but entities of shadow and horror, tied to the very fabric of the grove. Their twisted limbs writhed and contorted in the harsh glare, their hollow eyes reflecting a malevolence that seemed as old as the forest itself. I stood my ground, facing the abhorrent figures, my heart pounding in my chest like a war drum. The fear was there, of course, but it was overpowered by a fierce determination, a burning resolve to save Sarah from these monstrous beings. The creatures recoiled from the light, their eerie incantations faltering as they shrank back into the shadows. The forest echoed with their shrieks of frustration and anger, a cacophony that sent chills down my spine. With the creatures momentarily at bay, I rushed to Sarah's side, my hand shaking as I untied the bindings that held her. Her eyes, wide with terror, met mine, and I could see the relief wash over her as I helped her to her feet. We didn't waste any time. The forest was still alive with the sounds of the retreating creatures, a chilling reminder of the horrors that lurked in the shadows. We knew we had to get out of there, to escape the cursed grove and its monstrous inhabitants. With Sarah clinging to me, we stumbled through the underbrush, the forest seeming to close in around us. Every rustling leaf, every snapping twig felt like a threat, but we pressed on, determined to escape the nightmarish grove. What was once a peaceful forest now transformed into a labyrinth of terror, filled with creatures that lurked just beyond the reach of our wavering flashlights. The whispers grew louder, their chilling cadence echoing through the dense forest, a symphony of fear, playing to the rhythm of our racing hearts. Each rustle of leaves, each snapping twig, was a chilling reminder of the unseen horrors that stalked us, as relentless as they were merciless. Our breaths came out in ragged gasps as we pushed through the undergrowth, the cold seeping into our bones, the dread gnawing at our courage. We could feel the shadows growing bolder, their forms twisting and contorting in the dim light, their silhouettes a ghastly tableau of nightmares come to life. The forest was no longer a place of tranquility, but a hunting ground for these shadowy entities. The darkness was their cloak, the silence their weapon, and we, the unsuspecting intruders, were their prey. The air around us seemed to thicken, heavy with an otherworldly menace that made every step feel like a trudge through quicksand. As we stumbled forward, the shadows reached out with elongated skeletal fingers, their touch as cold as death itself. Our skin crawled at the contact, the icy grip of fear threatening to paralyze us. But we could not afford to stop, to surrender to the terror. We had to keep moving, to fight against the tide of darkness that threatened to consume us. With every step we took, the shadows seemed to mirror our movements, their whispers turning into guttural growls. The forest was alive with their malevolence, their presence casting a pall of dread that was almost tangible. Our hearts racing and pounding against our chests, so loud it was akin to thunder. We knew we were in a race against time, a race against the encroaching shadows. The forest had turned against us, and the only way out was to keep moving, to keep pushing through the fear, through the darkness, and towards the unknown. The forest itself seemed to conspire against us, roots and vines slithering like serpents to trip us up. We were in a world that defied logic, where the very earth beneath our feet betrayed us. The ground twisted and turned, morphing into gnarled roots that reached out to ensnare us. Branches swayed and creaked, their skeletal fingers clawing at our clothes, tugging us back towards the heart of the forest, back towards the shadows. The air grew colder, the chill sinking into our bones, sapping our energy. The wind howled through the trees, whispering threats and taunts, carrying with it the stench of decay and the promise of death. Leaves rustled menacingly, forming a symphony of terror that echoed through the forest. Our path was a labyrinth of deceit and treachery, a game of survival against an opponent that knew our every move. The trees towered over us, their gnarled barks twisted into grotesque faces, their hollow eyes watching our every step, their gnashing maws laughing at our plight. Despite the forest's treachery, we fought back. We tore at the roots that tried to trip us, ducked under the branches that sought to snag us. We pressed on, our determination fueled by raw fear and the primal instinct to survive. Sarah and I, we were no longer just an army sergeant and a park ranger. We were prey trapped in a predator's den, fighting for our lives. We were two souls bound by terror, navigating through a nightmare that threatened to consume us. The forest seemed endless, a never-ending maze of darkness and despair. But we refused to succumb, refused to become another forgotten tale whispered by the wind through the trees. We pushed on, our breaths ragged, our bodies bruised and battered, our spirits unbroken. With each step, we felt the boundary between our world and a malevolent realm thinning. We were on the precipice, teetering between our reality and a world of shadows and nightmares. We knew we had to escape, had to survive, for the forest was not just a forest. It was a realm of darkness, a realm of treachery, a realm that hungered for our fear and our souls. In a last desperate act, we finally broke through the forest's edge and stumbled onto a narrow road. The world seemed to shift as we emerged from the forest's suffocating darkness into the open. The shadows hesitated, their malevolence held at bay by the boundary between the forest and the road, an invisible line they dared not cross. With adrenaline fueling our weary bodies, we pushed forward, our eyes catching the faint glow of headlights in the distance. Hope flickered in our hearts, a tiny flame against the all-consuming darkness. The road beneath our feet, though rough and cold, felt like a path to salvation, a lifeline pulling us away from the forest's insidious grasp. The car drew nearer, its headlights illuminating the area, casting long, eerie shadows on the road. The light was a beacon guiding us to safety, and we sprinted towards it, our lungs burning, our legs screaming in protest. The shadows, still lurking at the forest's edge, watched us, their eyes gleaming with thwarted malice. As we reached the car, the driver, unaware of the horrors we had just escaped, pulled over. We clambered in, relief washing over us in waves. For a moment we sat in silence, our breaths ragged and uneven, our hearts still pounding in our chests. The driver, a kind-looking man in his 50s, asked if we were all right. We offered him a weak smile, unable to articulate the terror we had just experienced. We glanced back at the forest, the darkness now receding in the rearview mirror, its malevolence replaced by the comforting hum of the car's engine and the soothing glow of the dashboard lights. The car sped away from the forest, carrying us towards safety. As we left the forest behind, we shared a fearful glance. The relief of escape was mingled with a palpable sense of dread, a gnawing realization that we had disturbed something ancient, something that should have been left undisturbed. The shadows, the whispers, the skeletal hands reaching out to us from the darkness, they were all imprinted onto our minds like a grotesque canvas. We stared out the rear window, the forest receding into the distance, its shadowy figures left behind, their haunting eyes gleaming in the darkness. We could still feel them watching us, their malevolent gaze piercing through the night. It was as though we had left a part of us behind, a piece of our souls claimed by the forest and its ancient inhabitants. Our hearts were still racing, thundering in our chests, echoing the chilling rhythm of the forest. The adrenaline rush was slowly receding, replaced by an overwhelming exhaustion. We slumped against the seats, our bodies trembling, the cold sweat on our skin beginning to dry. We turned to look at each other, our eyes reflecting the terror of our ordeal. We didn't need to speak. The shared experience had bound us together in a way words couldn't express. Our silence was filled with unspoken questions. What were those shadowy figures? Why did they haunt the forest? And most importantly, would they ever come for us again? In the days that followed, we tried to resume our lives, but the memory of that night lingered. We were haunted by nightmares, the shadowy figures invading our dreams, their malicious whispers echoing in our minds. We could still feel their chilling presence, a constant reminder of the terror we had experienced. The forest had marked us, its darkness seeping into our lives, tainting our dreams. We became prisoners of our own memories, the haunting aftermath of that night refusing to fade. We realized that we had not truly escaped. We had merely postponed our fate. The memory of that night would haunt us for the rest of our lives, a chilling reminder that the forest holds a darkness waiting to devour our souls. My name is Sergeant Turner, and what I'm about to tell you might seem like the fevered delusions of a battle-weary soldier, but I assure you, every word is true. I faced many threats in my time, but none quite like the one I encountered deep within the bowels of an eerie forest. This was no ordinary assignment. It was a mission that had me veer off the beaten path, far from the familiar chaos of the front lines, into an abyss of the unknown. We'd been hearing tales about a phantom predator, a creature elusive as a whisper and deadly as a viper lurking within the forest's shadowy embrace. My orders were clear yet shrouded in uncertainty. Unravel the mystery, neutralize the threat. The forest, with its dense foliage and uncanny silence, was not just a setting, but a character in this chilling tale. As an army sergeant with a penchant for tracking and eliminating threats, I was tasked with unraveling this enigma. The forest, dense and foreboding, seemed to tighten its grip around me as I led a specialized team into the heart of the unknown. The air was thick and stagnant, like the forest itself was holding its breath. Every rustle of the leaves, every snap of a twig, echoed ominously in the silence. The trees, ancient witnesses to the forest's dark secrets, seemed to whisper tales of the elusive creature we were hunting. As we ventured deeper into the woods, the signs of the creature's presence became more apparent. We found trees gouged with deep, menacing marks, a chilling testament to the creature's strength. Twisted branches formed a macabre tapestry, like a roadmap of the creature's hunting grounds. The scent of death hung heavy in the air, a grim reminder of the creature's deadly prowess. My team, seasoned soldiers all, were visibly on edge. Their eyes darted nervously, their hands gripped their weapons a little tighter. The forest, once just a backdrop, had become an active participant in our mission, a silent antagonist that kept its secrets well. Days blurred into nights as we followed the creature's trail. The tension among my team escalated with each passing moment, each sign of the creature's presence. We were in its territory now, and it knew it. It was like we were pieces in a twisted game of cat and mouse, with the creature always one step ahead, always watching. The phantom of the forest seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once. It was a ghost, a shadow, a whisper in the wind. We could feel its presence, see the traces it left behind, but never catch a glimpse of the creature itself. It was a master of its domain, and we were merely trespassers. As I led my team deeper into the heart of the unknown, I couldn't shake off a chilling sensation. It was as if the creature was toying with us, leading us deeper into its lair, drawing us into its game. The phantom of the forest was not just a predator. It was a puppeteer, pulling the strings in a macabre dance of life and death. I couldn't shake the feeling that the creature was toying with us. One by one, my team members disappeared into the shadows, their desperate calls echoing through the darkened woods. The forest, once merely a backdrop of our mission, had morphed into an active participant, swallowing up my comrades with an insatiable appetite. Each disappearance was a chilling symphony, starting with a sudden silence, followed by the crackling of undergrowth, and then a terrified shout that was abruptly cut off. The forest would then resume its eerie quietude, as if mocking our futile attempts to penetrate its secrets. The men, once hardened soldiers, were now shadows of their former selves, their eyes reflecting the terror that had seeped into our bones. We were not just facing an elusive creature, we were grappling with the unknown, the unseen, the unexplainable. Every rustle of leaves, every snapping twig, every distant howl sent waves of dread coursing through our veins. The forest was alive, and it was hostile. The shadows seemed to twist and distort, playing tricks on our strained eyes, making us question the very fabric of our reality. Despite the escalating fear, we pressed on. The mission was clear, and the stakes were high. We were no longer just soldiers, we were the thin line between the village and the lurking menace that had turned the forest into a hunting ground. As the days blurred into nights and the nights into days, my resolve hardened. My every step was a defiant challenge to the creature, a silent proclamation that I was not prey, but the predator. I was determined to confront the phantom that had turned the forest into a labyrinth of fear. Our numbers dwindled, but my determination surged. Every hollow echo in the woods, every whisper of the wind, every disappearing comrade only fanned the flames of my resolution. I was not just fighting for my life, I was fighting for every life that the beast had claimed, for every life it would claim if left unchecked. Fear settled over us like a suffocating shroud, but I was determined to confront the unseen menace that had become our relentless pursuer. On one fateful night, as the moon hung low in the sky, I stumbled upon an ancient burial ground hidden within the forest. The air was thick with a palpable sense of dread, and the silence of the woods was broken only by the rustling of leaves under my weary feet. Tombstones, worn by time and weather, stood as silent sentinels in this hallowed ground, their inscriptions eroded into obscurity. Suddenly, a guttural growl sliced through the silence, chilling my blood and quickening my pulse. From the deep shadows emerged the creature, its eyes burning like dying embers in the darkness. It was a grotesque, otherworldly being, its form a chilling testament to the nightmares whispered among the locals. As it advanced, I could feel its malevolent energy, a tangible force that filled the air with a sense of impending doom. Its razor-sharp claws glinted in the moonlight, promising a swift and brutal end. But fear, I knew, was a luxury I could not afford. The fire of determination ignited within me, fueling my will to survive, to conquer. The battle was a dance of death, a symphony of survival orchestrated in the heart of the haunted woods. With every swing of my weapon, the creature retaliated with a vicious swipe of its claws, its growls echoing through the silent forest. The night air was filled with the sound of our struggle, a chilling serenade to the deadly game of predator and prey. The creature was relentless, its power seemingly unfathomable. But with each blow, each grueling clash, I felt my resolve harden. The weight of its malevolent power was heavy, but the fire of determination burned brighter within me, It was a fire forged in the crucible of countless battles, a fire that refused to be extinguished. As our battle reached its crescendo, I could see the creature's eyes flicker with uncertainty. It was a moment of weakness, a fleeting opportunity that I seized with a final decisive strike. The creature let out a haunting cry, its form staggering back as its eyes met mine one last time. With each blow, I felt the weight of the creature's malevolent power, but the fire of determination burned within me. The creature fell, its form dissolving into the shadows from whence it came, leaving behind only the echo of its haunting cry and the scars of a battle that would forever be etched into my memory. In a moment of clarity, I lured the creature into a circle of ancient symbols etched into the forest floor. These symbols, barely visible under the years of moss and decay, hummed with an energy as old as the forest itself. Like a moth drawn to the flame, the creature stepped into the circle, its eyes reflecting a flicker of confusion. The symbols began to glow with a vibrant, ethereal light that seemed to pulsate in rhythm with the forest's heartbeat. The creature, caught in the midst of the ancient symbols, was trapped. It was as if the forest itself had conspired to end this reign of terror. The beast roared, its cry echoing through the woods, a chilling testament to its primal fury. But the forest remained unmoved, the ethereal light from the symbols growing brighter, casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to reach out and pull at the creature. It thrashed and roared, its claws scraping against the symbols in a futile attempt to escape. But the more it struggled, the brighter the symbols glowed, their power growing with each desperate cry. And then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the creature began to dissipate. Its form wavered, becoming translucent, then transparent, until finally it vanished entirely, leaving behind only the echo of its haunting cry. The symbols dimmed, their task completed, and the forest seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. I stood there in the heart of the forest, alone and changed. The encounter had left its mark on me, a scar that would forever remind me of the thin line that separates the world we know from the world that lurks in the shadows. The forest fell silent once more, and I emerged with a tale that defied belief. The creature was vanquished, but the memory of it, the terror it had instilled, would forever be etched into the lore of the haunted woods, a chilling reminder of the creature that once roamed these lands. The mysterious creature that had haunted the woods for years was vanquished, but the scars it left on my psyche would endure. The forest, once a battlefield of fear and terror, fell silent, its malevolent secret now a haunting memory. The twisted branches no longer whispered tales of the phantom, but echoed with the remnants of a battle fought against the unseen. My team members, lost to the shadows, were forever etched in the annals of the forest's dark history. Their sacrifice, a grim reminder of the dangers lurking in the unknown. I emerged from the woods, a changed man, carrying the weight of their loss and the haunting memory of a creature born of nightmares. The locals, with their tales of the phantom of the forest, added a new chapter to their lore. My encounter, my battle, my victory, now a part of their whispered tales. The locals would weave my story into the lore of the haunted woods, a testament to the thin line between the known and the unknown, the real and the supernatural. The night was thick with darkness as I trudged through the dense, foreboding woods. My name, for those curious enough to wonder, is Sergeant Turner. I've been in the service for more years than I care to count, but nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for the chilling experience that lay ahead. I'd been dispatched on a covert mission deep within the heart of a forbidden forest, a place where whispers of strange occurrences had been trickling down to the nearby villages. Even as I plunged deeper into the woods, I knew I was not alone. The moon, a spectral witness to my plight, hung ominously in the sky, its cold light casting eerie shadows that played hide-and-seek among the gnarled branches overhead. Our squad, a band of brothers, bound by duty and honor, had been scattered. Radios were silent. Communication, our lifeline, had been severed. The forest, once a place of natural beauty, had become a suffocating labyrinth of fear. The silence was deafening, punctuated only by the rustle of leaves and the distant, unsettling howls that seemed to be carried on the wind. Suddenly the air turned icy. An alien chill slithered up my spine, making the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. Dread settled in the pit of my stomach like a stone. I was alone, separated from my comrades, stranded in a place where reality seemed to warp and twist into grotesque shapes. Panic clawed at my senses, urging me to move, to escape the unseen eyes that watched from the shadows. Something was out there, watching, waiting. A shiver of anticipation swept through the forest, as if the very trees were holding their breath. I quickened my pace, my boots crunching on the fallen leaves beneath me. Each step echoed like a heartbeat in the silence, a reminder that I was alive. For now. The moonlight flickered, creating an unsettling strobe effect. My eyes darted around, trying to pierce through the darkness. Suddenly, a grotesque silhouette appeared, a shadowy figure that seemed to meld with the darkness. My heart pounded in my chest, a primal drumbeat echoing my growing fear. I fumbled for my rifle, the cold metal offering little comfort. I scanned the shadows, searching for any sign of movement. I could feel an unsettling presence. I was not alone. Something was out there, watching, waiting. Then, the air turned icy, and a chill crawled up my spine. The forest fell silent, save for the rustle of leaves underfoot. A guttural growl echoed through the stillness, a sound unlike anything I had ever heard. The beast was close. I turned, and there it was, a creature of nightmares, its fur matted with blood, eyes ablaze with a hunger that seemed out of this world. It stood on two legs, a monstrous fusion of man and wolf. It wasn't possible, but there was no denying it. A werewolf. My mind struggled to comprehend the sight before me. The creature was grotesque, its form twisted and unnatural. I could see the muscles rippling under its fur as it moved closer, its snarl sending shivers down my spine. I stumbled backward, my boots crunching on the fallen leaves. The werewolf's eyes locked onto mine, its gaze penetrating the darkness. It was a predator, and I was its prey. I could see the raw primal hunger in its eyes, a desire that sent a chill down my spine. Suddenly, it unleashed a blood-curdling howl, a sound so terrifying it seemed to freeze the very air around us. The howl echoed through the desolate woods, a chilling reminder of the creature's presence. I could feel its power, its dominance over the forest. This was its territory, and I was an unwelcome intruder. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The reality of my situation was starting to sink in. I was alone, lost in a forest with a creature of nightmares. The werewolf's eyes locked onto mine, and it unleashed a blood-curdling howl that echoed through the desolate woods. I sprinted through the maze of trees, heart pounding, branches slashing at my face as I desperately sought refuge. The forest was a labyrinth of shadows and fear, each tree an ominous sentinel standing witness to my terror. The werewolf was relentless, its growls echoing through the night, each snarl a chilling reminder of the beast hot on my heels. The moon was my only guide, its silvery light casting long, haunting shadows. I darted between the trees, my breath coming in ragged gasps as I tried to put as much distance as I could between myself and the monster. But it was fast, faster than anything I'd ever encountered, and its blood-curdling howls were a constant reminder of the danger snapping at my heels. Suddenly, the forest gave way to a clearing. Bathed in the ethereal glow of the moonlight was an ancient stone altar, its surface etched with symbols that spoke of a time long forgotten. A cold shiver ran down my spine as I realized the implications. This was no ordinary forest, and the werewolf was not its only secret. There was a darker presence here, something ancient and malevolent. A guttural growl behind me snapped me out of my thoughts. The werewolf had caught up, its eyes glowing like fiery embers in the darkness. I had no choice but to keep running. My heart pounded in my chest like a war drum, each beat a countdown to my potential end. The forest closed back around me, the trees once again forming a dizzying maze. I could hear the werewolf crashing through the underbrush behind me, its growls growing louder, more frantic. It was gaining on me, and I knew I had to make a decision. With my last burst of energy, I veered off the path and plunged into the thicket, the sharp branches cutting into my skin. The werewolf's snarls echoed behind me, but they were growing more distant. I had managed to confuse the beast, at least for now. The forest was once again silent, the only sound my ragged breathing and the pounding of my heart. I had survived the chase, but the night was far from over. The forest still held its secrets, and the werewolf was still out there, waiting. As for me, I was left with a terrifying reality. I was being hunted by something far more dangerous than I could ever have imagined. With my last burst of energy, I veered off the path and plunged into the thicket, hoping to throw off my pursuer. Hours passed, and I cautiously emerged from my hiding place, the forest now eerily silent. The cacophony of the night had been replaced by an unsettling quietude, a stark contrast to the terror that had unfolded just a few hours ago. My heart pounded in my chest, a silent drum echoing in the stillness as I ventured further into the heart of the woods. The moon shone brightly, casting long, ghostly shadows that seemed to reach out to me, whispering tales of nameless horrors. I could still feel the presence of the creature, its essence clinging to the air like a spectral residue, a haunting reminder of the nightmare I had survived. The forest bore the scars of the chase. Broken branches, trampled undergrowth, and a chilling sense of emptiness were all that remained. I could still hear the echoes of the creature's howls, a symphony of terror that played out in my mind, a chilling reminder of the thin line between life and death. As I trudged further, a sight met my eyes that froze my blood. There lay my squad, their bodies strewn across the forest floor, the final victims of the monstrous werewolf. Their lifeless eyes stared into the void, their faces frozen in their final moments of terror. The scene was a grim testament to the savagery of the creature, a poignant reminder of our futile struggle against the supernatural. The werewolf had vanished, its monstrous appetite sated by the lives of my comrades. The forest had reclaimed its silence, the only evidence of its resident terror being the bodies of my fallen brothers. The forest, once a symbol of nature's tranquility, was now a haunted graveyard, a chilling monument to the horrors that lurked within its depths. I stood there, amidst the silent trees and the bodies of my fallen comrades, a lone survivor in a forest of death. I had stared into the face of the supernatural and lived to tell the tale. But the memory of that night would forever be etched into my soul, a haunting reminder of the terror that had unfolded. The werewolf's hunger had been sated, leaving only a chilling reminder of the supernatural terror that lurked within the heart of those haunted woods. To this day, I am haunted by that night, tormented by the memory of the beast that stalked me in the darkness. The events that transpired in that dense, foreboding forest have left an indelible mark on my psyche, a terrifying reminder of the supernatural horrors that lurk beneath the veneer of reality. The beast was not simply a creature of nightmares, no, it was more than that. It was a grotesque fusion of man and wolf, a monstrous manifestation of the primal and the supernatural. The image of its bloodthirsty eyes, its matted fur damp with the scent of death, haunts my every waking moment, a chilling testament to the horrors that wait in the unfathomable depths of the dark. The aftermath was a chilling spectacle of death and despair. My comrades, once vibrant and full of life, were reduced to lifeless husks, their eyes staring into the abyss, their bodies a macabre testament to the beast's insatiable hunger. The sight of their faces, frozen in an eternal scream, is a vision that still lingers at the edge of my consciousness, a grim reminder of the price we paid that night. The experience has changed me, left me questioning the very nature of man and beast. Are we not all monsters lurking beneath a thin veneer of civilization? The beast was once a man consumed by the primal urge to survive, to hunt, to kill. Who's to say that under the right circumstances we would not all succumb to the same primal instincts? The forest holds secrets that the world may never know, secrets that challenge our understanding of the world and our place in it. It is a realm where the line between man and monster blurs, where the primal and the civilized collide with devastating consequences. It's in the quiet moments, in the dead of night, when the moon casts long shadows and the world is still, that I am left to wonder if the line between man and monster is far more fragile than we dare to imagine. It was a moonless night, and we were deep in the heart of the darkest woods you can imagine. The air was thick with the scent of pine needles and damp earth. The only light came from our hurriedly lit lanterns, casting long, dancing shadows that made the gnarled trees appear like lurking specters. We were a band of hardened soldiers, sent on a recon mission into the depths of these haunting woods. My name, well, it's Turner. Retired Army Captain Turner, to be precise. I was leading the squad that night. The woods were so dense, so impenetrably dark, it was as if we were wading through a sea of black ink. The only sound was the crunch of our boots on the forest floor the occasional hoot of an owl, and the rustling of leaves above us. There's something about the woods at night that can make even the bravest soul feel a sliver of unease. And these were no ordinary woods. The air was heavy with a sense of foreboding, the kind that makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up. Each step we took seemed to lead us deeper into the unknown, further from the safety of civilization. As we ventured further, the woods seemed to close in around us. The air grew colder and an eerie silence enveloped us. The usual nocturnal sounds were oddly absent. No crickets, no rustling leaves, just deafening silence. The kind of silence that amplifies every heartbeat, every breath, every thought. We had our compasses, our maps, our training. But something was different that night. It felt as if the woods themselves were watching us, waiting. We had a mission, and we were determined to see it through. But as we pressed on, navigating the challenging terrain and the suffocating darkness, a creeping sense of unease began to grip us. We thought we were on the right path, guided by our training and our resolve, but as the night wore on, as the darkness deepened, something felt off. The woods held a secret, and we were about to uncover it. Little did we know, our real mission was just beginning. That's when we stumbled upon an old, dilapidated cabin. It was the kind of place that made your skin crawl, like something out of a campfire ghost story. The windows were smashed to bits, the door hung off its hinges, and the wood was rotting away. But as unnerving as it was, we needed shelter, and it was the only option in sight. As we stepped inside, a wave of stale, musty air hit us. The floorboards groaned under our weight, echoing through the eerie silence. The cabin was empty and abandoned, but it felt like we were disturbing something, or someone. We hunkered down for the night, setting up our gear and taking turns standing guard. But as the hours ticked by, the cabin seemed to come alive. Shadows flickered on the walls, even though our flashlights were steady. We heard soft whispers, too faint to make out words, but clear enough to know they weren't just the wind. I tried to keep the squad calm, telling them it was just our minds playing tricks. After all, the human brain is excellent at finding patterns where there aren't any. It's a survival instinct, meant to keep us safe from predators. But even as I spoke those reassuring words, a cold dread was creeping up my spine. Then, just as we were settling in, we heard a creak from the far corner of the cabin. We all turned, flashlights sweeping the room, but there was nothing there. Just an old, worn-out chair, rocking back and forth on its own. The room went silent. We could hear each other's breath, ragged and shallow. The temperature seemed to drop a few degrees, and I could see my own breath, fogging up in the air. I knew then that we weren't alone. There was something in the cabin with us, something that didn't want us there. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and a chill ran down my spine. I tried to dismiss it, to convince myself it was just the wind or an animal outside, but deep down I knew something wasn't right. Then out of nowhere, the door slammed shut with a deafening bang. We were trapped. The echo of the door's slam reverberated through the cabin like a death knell. A thick, heavy silence fell upon us, and the only sound was our ragged breathing and the pounding of our hearts. We were soldiers, trained for combat, but nothing could have prepared us for this. We rushed to the door, pushing and pulling with all our might, but it was as if it had been sealed by some unseen force. The air grew thick with fear, and the cabin seemed to close in around us. A feeling of dread clawed at our guts. We were trapped like rats in a cage, and the predator was closing in. That's when we heard it. A low guttural growl that seemed to come from the very depths of the earth. It echoed through the cabin, sending a chill down our spines. It was a sound no human or animal could make. It was something otherworldly. Then the shadows started to move. From the corners of the room, glowing eyes appeared, staring at us with a predatory hunger. They were everywhere, surrounding us. The flickering candlelight reflected off them, casting eerie patterns on the walls. It was a sight that could freeze the blood in your veins. The panic was palpable. You could taste it in the air, feel it in the tremors of your fellow soldiers. We were surrounded, outnumbered, but we were soldiers, and we wouldn't go down without a fight. We formed a defensive circle, each of us back to back, weapons at the ready. The growling intensified, and the eyes seemed to multiply. It felt like the walls were closing in. We were in the belly of the beast, and it was about to swallow us whole. We were surrounded by unseen forces, and the tension was palpable. The air was charged with an energy that was both terrifying and electrifying. It was a standoff, a waiting game. And we knew deep down that the real horror was yet to come. Suddenly, the temperature dropped even more, and our breaths turned to mist. Ice seemed to form in the air, and the darkness around us intensified. It was as if the world had gone into a deep freeze, and we were in the heart of it. A chill swept over us, penetrating our bones and making our teeth chatter. And then, in the heart of that chilling darkness, a figure emerged. It was a soldier, but not like any we'd seen before. He was spectral, a ghostly apparition, his uniform tattered and time-worn. He wore the insignia of a rank long obsolete, his gear hearkening back to a bygone era. His form seemed to shimmer, an ethereal glow emanating from him. His eyes were the most haunting. They glowed with a cold, otherworldly light. Every instinct in me screamed danger. My heart pounded in my chest like a war drum, and I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. My squad was frozen, their faces a mask of terror. The spectral soldier stood there, an ominous presence in the cabin's cold, dark confines. Suddenly he pointed a finger at me. His voice echoed through the cabin, a hollow, resonating sound that was more felt than heard. "Sergeant Turner," he intoned, "you've trespassed on sacred ground. Leave now or face the consequences." Every hair on my body stood on end. His words echoed in my mind, a haunting refrain. The air around us seemed to throb with a palpable menace. I could see the fear in my squad's eyes, their faces pale and drawn. Without a second thought, I barked orders to retreat. We scrambled to our feet, desperation fueling our actions. The door, previously immovable, swung open as if pushed by an unseen force. We hightailed it out of that cabin like bats out of hell, the ghostly soldier's warning echoing in our ears. As we stumbled through the woods, not daring to look back, the cabin and its ghostly occupant faded into the darkness. It was a night I'll never forget, a testament to the unexplainable, the supernatural. To this day, I can't explain what we witnessed that night, but I know one thing for sure. There are things in those woods that the military training manuals don't prepare you for. And that, my friends, is the tale of Sergeant Turner's spooky encounter in the haunted woods. We stumbled through the woods, not looking back until we were miles away. The darkness around us felt oppressive, as if we were running through a nightmare. The haunting image of the ghostly soldier and the chilling echo of his warning reverberated in our minds. With every step, we moved further away from the haunted cabin, but it felt as though we could never outrun the terror we had experienced. Our hearts pounded in our chests, each beat a reminder of the eerie encounter. The woods, once a source of mystery and adventure, had become a haunting symbol of the unknown. We moved as one, our bodies fueled by adrenaline, yet our minds were scattered, grappling with the horror of the night. The distant howls of unseen creatures were now more foreboding than ever, a grim reminder of the inexplicable entities that lurked within the shadows. As dawn broke, we emerged from the woods, the first rays of sunlight piercing through the dense canopy. With the light came a sense of relief, as though we had escaped the clutches of a bone-chilling nightmare. Yet, the eerie silence of the morning was a stark reminder that our ordeal was far from a dream. In the aftermath of that night, we were changed men. The bravado we once carried was replaced by a profound respect for the unknown. We learned that there were forces beyond our understanding, entities that our military training could not prepare us for. The memory of that night still lingers, a ghostly echo in the back of our minds. The haunted cabin, the spectral soldier, the chilling warning. They have become an integral part of our shared history, a tale we recount with a mix of dread and fascination. And that, my friends, is the tale of Sergeant Turner's spooky encounter in the haunted woods. The moon hung low in the ink-black sky, casting an eerie glow over the dense woods. A chilling wind rustled the skeletal branches, whispering tales of the unknown. I am Sergeant Turner, a retired Army captain who'd seen too many horrors in the line of duty. Yet none of those experiences had prepared me for the haunting mission that lay ahead. The orders were clear yet shrouded in mystery, a classified task sent from the upper echelons of military command. My objective was simple on the surface: find and retrieve a mysterious artifact said to be hidden in the heart of these foreboding woods. But the whispers, the rumors that trailed the end of those orders, they spoke of something else. They hinted at an ancient guardian, a creature of the night that defied all logic and reason. The Mothman. As I ventured deeper into the woods, the silence grew heavier, almost suffocating. It was as if the forest itself held its breath, watching, waiting. The only sounds were the soft crunch of leaves under my boots and the occasional hoot of an owl, a solitary sentinel in the night. The towering trees seemed to close in around me, their gnarled branches reaching out as if trying to pull me into their dark embrace. The further I went, the more the air thickened with an otherworldly tension. Whispers seemed to echo through the trees, their source indistinct. Shadows danced in the corner of my eyes, playing tricks on my mind. The artifact, it seemed, was not going to give itself up without a fight. Despite the growing sense of dread, I pressed on, driven by duty and the need to complete the mission. But I couldn't escape the feeling of being watched. It was a sensation that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end, a prickling awareness that unseen eyes followed my every move. I was not alone in these woods, and whatever lurked in the darkness was watching, waiting. As I delved deeper into the heart of the forest, the air grew thicker with an otherworldly tension. The once familiar sounds of nature were replaced by an eerie silence, punctuated only by the crunch of leaves under my boots. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath, as if bowing to the unseen force that ruled this domain. My name is Turner, a seasoned soldier, but in these woods, I was a stranger trespassing in a world that did not welcome my presence. The trees around me towered like ancient sentinels, their gnarled branches reaching out as if trying to halt my progress. The moonlight that filtered through the dense foliage painted a landscape of shadows that danced and twisted with every flicker of the wind. And then there were the whispers. They were faint, barely audible, like the rustling of dried leaves. But they were there, floating around me, brushing past my ears in an indecipherable murmur. These whispers weren't just sounds. They were carriers of a primal fear that seeped into my bones, a chilling reminder of the unknown that awaited me. My instincts as a soldier kicked in, and I gripped my rifle tighter. I was no longer just a man on a mission. I was a hunter, in a forest of shadows and the hunted. Ahead, shrouded in darkness, stood an ancient structure, its dilapidated form a stark contrast to the surrounding wilderness. Its cracked walls and broken arches were testament to the ravages of time, yet there was a sense of purpose in its silent existence. This was no ordinary ruin. This was the lair of the Mothman, the guardian of the artifact I sought. The moonlight cast an ethereal glow on the structure, and the air around it seemed to ripple with a palpable tension. A sense of foreboding washed over me as I approached it, my heart pounding in my chest like a war drum. I stood at the entrance, the darkness within promising a confrontation I was not sure I was prepared for. The entrance yawned open like a hungry maw, and a guttural moan emanated from its depths. With each step into the darkness, the air grew heavy with an unnatural stillness. The echo of my own breath bounced off the stone walls like a lone drummer marching to a grim beat. An ethereal glow filled the space, casting twisted shadows that danced and writhed with a life of their own. The walls were adorned with strange symbols, their meanings lost to time, and a sickly sweet odor hung heavy in the air. Suddenly there it was, a hulking figure obscured in the shadows, the Mothman. Its wings, vast and menacing, stretched out on either side, stirring the dust-laden air into a frenzied dance. Its eyes, twin orbs of burning ember, pierced the darkness, locking onto me with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. The creature stood as a silent sentinel, the last barrier between me and my objective. The presence of the Mothman was suffocating, an oppressive weight that seemed to squeeze the very air from my lungs. It was an entity that defied all logic, a creature of nightmares brought to life. Its gaze was unyielding, its eyes filled with an ancient wisdom and a predatory hunger that sent a chill through my bones. A haunting voice echoed in my mind, a sinister whisper that seemed to seep into my very soul. "Turn back, intruder," it hissed. Its words, though devoid of physical form, carried an undeniable weight. They spoke of untold centuries, of secrets better left buried, of a power that was not to be trifled with. My heart pounded in my chest, a frantic rhythm that matched the eerie silence of the lair. The Mothman, an ancient guardian of secrets, stood as an immovable obstacle. Its wings, spread wide in a display of dominance, sent a clear message. This was its realm, and I was the unwelcome intruder. But I couldn't turn back. I had a mission to complete, orders to follow. The artifact, a relic of unimaginable power, lay just beyond the reach of the Mothman. I steeled myself for the confrontation that was to come, my resolve unwavering. The creature's eyes narrowed, and a deafening screech filled the air as it unfolded its massive wings. The hunt was about to begin. The creature's eyes narrowed, and a deafening screech filled the air as it unfolded its massive wings. With a heart-stopping flutter, the Mothman took flight. Its enormous wings beat against the cold, still air of the lair, sending a torrent of dust and debris swirling around me. Fear gripped me, a primal instinct that screamed for me to run. I turned on my heels, my boots clapping against the stone floor as I dove headlong into the labyrinthine corridors of the lair. The Mothman's screech echoed through the tunnels, a haunting reminder of the creature that pursued me. The air was thick with an otherworldly energy, an unseen force that seemed to press in on me from all sides. Every shadow, every flicker of movement set my heart racing faster. The labyrinth was a twisted maze, its walls lined with strange symbols that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. My pulse thundered in my ears, drowning out the world around me. I could feel the Mothman closing in, its wings beating like a thunderous drum. The air behind me grew warm, a telltale sign of the creature's proximity. Its hot breath seemed to sear the back of my neck, a chilling reminder of the fate that awaited me should I falter. I pushed myself harder, my muscles screaming in protest. The world around me became a blur, a chaotic whirl of shadows and stone. The corridors twisted and turned, leading me deeper into the heart of the lair. The Mothman was relentless. Its screech filled the air, a haunting symphony of terror that echoed off the stone walls. I could hear the flap of its massive wings, the sound growing louder and more insistent with each passing moment. Every instinct screamed at me to stop, to surrender to the inevitable, but I couldn't. I wouldn't. I had a mission to complete, orders to follow. The artifact was within my grasp, and I refused to let it slip away. With a final burst of energy, I rounded a corner, the Mothman hot on my trail. The shadows seemed to come alive, reaching out to drag me into the abyss. Just as I thought I couldn't go on, I stumbled upon the ancient artifact, a relic of unimaginable power. In the heart of the labyrinth, the artifact lay dormant, shrouded in a spectral light. It was a sight to behold, a strange token from an era long lost. The relic was an enigma, a testament to the power that once held sway over the forest. It was unlike anything I had ever seen, an object of intricate design pulsating with an energy that seemed to hum in harmony with the beat of my heart. The power it emanated was palpable, a tangible force that radiated from its core, filling the air with an electric charge. It was as if the artifact was alive, its energy a heartbeat echoing through the silence. The moment my fingers brushed against the cool surface of the artifact, a shockwave rippled through the lair. The spectral light intensified, illuminating the shadows and casting an ethereal glow on the ancient symbols etched into the stone walls. The relic pulsed in my hands, a rhythm growing in pace as if excited by my touch. The Mothman's reaction was instantaneous. It screeched in what seemed like agony, its eerie glow flickering, as if in response to the artifact's energy. The creature reeled back, its massive wings flapping chaotically, stirring up a whirlwind of dust and debris. It was as if the very presence of the artifact was anathema to the Mothman, a force it could neither comprehend nor withstand. The atmosphere within the lair shifted dramatically. The oppressive darkness retreated, replaced by the artifact's radiant light. The whispers in the air stilled, the shadows lost their menacing edge. And for the first time since my venture into the heart of the forest, I felt a sense of calm. But it was a calm laced with an undercurrent of danger. The Mothman, though seemingly repelled, lurked in the shadows, its glowing eyes fixed on the artifact in my hands. The tension was palpable. A standoff between man, beast, and an ancient power reawakened. The very fabric of the lair seemed to rebel against its presence, but I had it. I had the artifact. I had uncovered a relic of power, a piece of history that held the potential to change everything. And in doing so, I had faced the unimaginable, the stuff of nightmares. But the mission was far from over. The echoing screams of the beast were always in the background as I navigated the maze-like corridors of a forgotten ruin, with the very air around me seeming to recoil in fear from the monstrous presence of the creature. Imagine the relief as I finally emerged from the nightmarish maze, the chilling cries of the Mothman diminishing behind me. Had escaped its clutches, but the terror of the encounter was far from over. Forest around me was eerily silent. the moon casting long, sinister shadows that danced and flickered like specters in the night. I found myself back in the familiar world, the dreadful artifact still clenched in my trembling hands. The horror of what I had faced is still haunting me. The memory of the Mothman and its lair is etched into my mind, a chilling reminder of the unspeakable darkness that lurks just beyond the fringes of our reality. As I looked back on my harrowing encounter, I couldn't help but reflect on the horror I had faced. I stared into the abyss and it stared back. The Mothman had burning eyes and mournful cries. The encounter forever changed my perception of the world. The Mothman would forever haunt my dreams, a ghostly specter of the unknown. In the face of such terror, one can't help but question their understanding of the world. The encounter was a stark reminder of the unknown, the unexplainable, the unimaginable horrors that exist just beyond the veil of our reality. But it was also a testament to the human spirit and the courage it takes to face our deepest fears, no matter how terrifying they may be. And so, our tale of the campfire horrors comes to an end. Until next time, sleep tight. Before we part ways, dear viewers, remember to stay vigilant. The campfire horrors may have been extinguished for now, but the embers of the unknown always remain. As you lay down to sleep tonight, don't forget the lessons from our tale. Safety is but a fleeting moment in a world of unseen. So, if you've enjoyed this journey into the abyss, don't forget to ring that bell and smash that like button. Do it before the thing under your bed decides to pay you a visit. Oh, and keep those night lights on. You never know what might be lurking in the dark. Thank you for embarking on this terrifying adventure with us, until our paths cross again in another tale of the unknown. Goodbye and sweet dreams, if you can.